Oh, the main button's just not working now. Alright, bear with me. There we are. Alright. Hi, everyone. Welcome into a thing that I do once every 2 or 3 months, and then forget about, and then do every 2 or 3 months, which sort of has the name Homebrew Review, but it doesn't really fit. Because I very rarely review your stuff. But yeah, welcome in. It's just sort of like, it's a light natter about TTRPGs. I really don't want to call it a podcast, but people will probably listen to it in the same way as a podcast, in that they'll listen to it for like 10 minutes while second screening something else. But yeah, I'm mainly doing it today because it's hot again. We are on our 5th consecutive heat wave in the United Kingdom. It hasn't rained where I am in 7 weeks. And I'm in the UK. That is not natural. So I thought, well, I want to stream, but I can't have the air conditioning on and stream the normal stuff I stream because I talk pretty loudly when I'm doing those. And there are kids nearby, and the sort of things I normally say are, I would say, not appropriate for kids, right? Or at least, you know, parents should be able to choose whether they hear me doing Monster Manual Smash or Pass or not, for example. So we're going to have a more normal talk about TTRPGs, or so I said to myself. I was like, I will answer some questions. It'll be nice. So I posted on the Discord. I said, hey, supporters, you're lovely people, honest. You got any questions you want answered? And I'll answer them. Send them my way. They took this personally. So I have their questions here, and I'm going to answer them earnestly. I'm going to answer each and every one of them earnestly, but genuinely, you would look at some of these and go, do they even know what a TTRPG is? All right? They got to learn. Yeah, but they can learn from someone else, not me, okay? I want no blame coming back to me. Thank you so much, Summer, for 70 months. I really appreciate that. That's a lot of months. I really appreciate that. I hope you're having fun. Are you still in Scotland at the moment? I hope you're having fun up there if you are. And if you're not, I hope you're having a miserable time. I don't know. By the way, if you have any further questions that you want me to answer, you know, it doesn't just have to be the supporters' questions. Feel free to ask them in the chat. If I miss or ignore them, just feel free to put it in all caps 200 times or so, and then I'm sure I'll get it. And don't actually do that, I will ban you. But, you know, do feel free to ask questions. So I got some of those. I'll talk about some of the things I've been working on as well, show off a few things, because I've been busy. This may surprise you all, but I do too much. And I've been continuing to do too much for the last few months. So I've got a few things to update you on as well. Which is cool. There's some really cool stuff. But let's dig into these questions. First of all, Ben, who is a veteran TTRPG designer and player, is in the Guild of Icons currently, in the Book of Mirrors, playing cut paste, has started off with a really strong question. What's the best dice? First of all, if we're talking singular, it should be die. That's just to start us off here, Ben. Dice is the plural. So what's the best? I mean, there's a lot of dice out there. A lot of you will know that. That's not exactly groundbreaking information, all right? But there's also ones outside of the sort of standard 6, D4, D6, D8, D10, D12, D20. Yes, 6. Outside of the standard 6, there are a few extras. Like, I've seen a D13. Very strange. But what is the best? Is a difficult question, because I think it depends on a bunch of things. First of all, I can start with the worst. I pure hate the D10. I'm sorry, Matt Colville. The D10 sucks, all right? I'm sorry, D100 players. The D10 sucks. It is just fundamentally unpleasant to roll. So I think one criteria we need is that it must be pleasant to roll. So D10, out. D4, out. That doesn't roll at all. Like, you put it down and it's just going to be whatever, you know, side up that you are holding. It does not really move around much. D4 is very unpleasant. D6 is fine. That rolls. We've all rolled 6-sided dice. The D8's all right. It's fine. It does roll enough. It's like a D4, but it rolls enough. The D10 is just unpleasant. Fundamentally just wrong. I'm going to say the D12's out as well. D12 is out because you always mix it up with a D20. It's roughly the same shape as a D20, and I think that is a problem. So we've eliminated 2 so far. 3 so far. D10, D4, D12. That leaves us 3 more. Now, we've got the esoteric ones, but we're going to stick with these, with the main ones at the moment. Now, the D6 is a workhorse, right? It'll do anything. So the D6 is pretty good. D6 is good. Now, I'm thinking tier list, like, where are we putting it here? Because I can't eliminate the D6, because it rolls well. And, you know, it's got a good range of values that works for a lot of games, and everyone knows a D6. So I can't eliminate it yet, but is it the best? Now, that is a good question. I think the D8 is out. I don't think it rolls as well than a D20 or a D6. I just don't think it rolls as well. It's a little unpleasant to hold a lot of as well. So, D20 versus D6. D6, everyone knows the D6. It's nice. It's a good die. The D20 rolls so much better. You're practically throwing a circle. And I think that's the only reason. I think the D20 is best. There you go. We've done it. We've done it, everyone. And this is coming from someone who has put 0 D20s in his own TTRPG that he's designing, so I may have to reconsider. So we're off to a cracking start. We've got a new question in chat. Cat that says, very real TTRPG question. Say I wanted to shift D&D currency to cheese money. What cheeses should I use? And what's the cheese to gold conversion rate? Hold on a sec. I'll put it at the bottom. Woo! I'm just going to copy this. There we go. We'll deal with that in a bit. Let's go on to our next question. What should you do when you step on a D4? First of all, why are you stepping on D4s? Like realistically, why are you stepping? Why do you have so many D4s that you're not going to notice one is missing? And secondly, that's going to hurt. What should you do? It also depends. Are you wearing shoes? You're probably all right. If you're not wearing shoes, if you're barefoot, and barefoot is legal, although probably you shouldn't be barefoot when playing a TTRPG in person. You could, like, if you're like me and you're sat in front of a computer screen, you'd be barefoot. I'm barefoot right now. You don't know that, but I am. And I am during all Guild of Icons games. I mean, what do? You just scream, right? You just go, ah! It's like Lego. Experience pain is my answer. Like, what should you do? Stop being stood on it. Like, you've already made the mistake. I don't think I can help at this point. Right? Bean asks, how do you make a non-horny bard? Now, this sounds like a joke question, but there are some really easy answers to this. So first of all, think about what a bard is. What do bards represent? Bards represent artistry, and there are plenty of non-horny artists. Now, there are certainly a lot of horny artists, like so many horny artists, but there are lots who are not. You know, for every James Joyce who's writing home to his wife about how much she wants to smell her farts, there is insert an author who wasn't horny here. I'm sure one exists. The guy who did Ready Player One, probably? I don't know. But at the same, like, think about it this way. Like, you could be a poet, all right? They can be very horny, but you don't have to be, right? You could be a singer who isn't horny. Like, this is fine, all right? You have to decide, and I think the critical thing about a bard is you have to decide what their dedication is. Like, what is their passion, and how do they flow that through? You could absolutely be a musician who's a rock star, who's just all about partying and groupies and that sort of thing. But you could be a musician who's like a virtuoso, who is an absolute perfectionist about music, and their passion is getting music exactly perfectly right. You could be a writer who is in many ways like a politician or something like that. So that's how you make a non-horny bard, is to think about really the breadth of not hornies, the breadth of passion, because that is what a bard is. It's passion, and passion does not necessarily mean horniness. So I'm just going to say consider passion for that. I will try and write these as I'm going as well. Exactly, charisma does not equal horny. Otherwise, you wouldn't use I was about to say otherwise you wouldn't use intimidation with charisma. You absolutely would in a horny context. Following up on this, Rose also asked, which class is the least horny, and how would you make it more horny? And this is a tough question, actually. Like, it sounds silly, but it's a tough question because my instinct is to say cleric, but a lot of people really like those nun uniforms, huh? So it probably isn't cleric. Is it? It's not barbarian. Let's be honest, it's not barbarian. Bard is obviously not on the list, so we've already gotten rid of those. Monk, maybe. I mean, they're very athletic, and the thing about the Olympics, if you remember, is that they're all having sex with each other. So is it monk? Probably not. So what are we left with? Ranger. They're out in the woods all the time, but they're also that archetype of the sort of, what is it? The erotic literature sort of lonely woodsman sort of vibe, you know, because apparently certain authors just like got way too into Little Red Riding Hood. So is it ranger? Probably not. I mean, Aragorn is the archetypal ranger, and come on now. Come on now. Fighter? Fighter's pretty plain. It could be fighter. Paladin, maybe. Paladins are very... They got a stick up them, right? You know? They're very... Very full of themselves as well. I mean, so are bards, but in a different way. I think it might be fighter. I'm thinking rogue is certainly not. Certainly not rogue. I mean, wizard, maybe? Could it be wizard? Well, no, because Baldur's Gate exists, and the horniest character in all of Baldur's Gate is a wizard. So it can't be a wizard. Yeah, nah. I've already discounted cleric because, you know, people like nun uniforms. Artificer? I mean, that's gadgetry and toys. It's not artificer. I think I'm settling on fighter. But I would say that paladin is also probably the least horny. So that's the first half of the question. We haven't done the second half. So fighter or paladin. Now, how would you make it more horny? I think here's the reason why I'm unsure on paladin is because paladin has a lot of like oath of conquest and things like that, and it already sounds horny. They've got command where they just tell you to kneel and think, you know what, we're deleting paladin. The more I think about it, the more it's already horny. Hey Rose, welcome in. This is your fault. So we've got to stick with fighter. Now, how do we make fighter hornier? Fighter, almost all of their substance comes from subclasses, right? Almost all of their substance comes from subclass. So we make a subclass that's a horny fighter, right? A sort of charming and dashing sort of character, maybe. Dashing, charismatic fighter. You're sort of heading a little bit in the rogues, sort of stepping on the rogues territory here because the rogue swashbuckler is a little like this, but a dashing, charismatic fighter isn't exclusive to roguishness. You can be dashing without being a rogue, for example. Give them a skimpy outfit. I mean, that's a great start. That doesn't necessarily make them horny, though. makes you horny for them, maybe. But I think a dashing, charismatic fighter, you'd have some abilities that are sort of charming, that sort of thing. Not sort of magical charming, but being charming. All right. Let's go on to our next question. Bean asks, what would an RPG for sexy roleplay look like? Yeah, you can see that the questions are getting worse as I keep going on. Okay. So, I mean, first of all, this already exists. Like, this has to already exist. Several different ways, okay? There are... Okay, first of all, Riz, I want to clarify. I did not ask for dogshit questions. You said you were just going to think up dogshit questions. Okay. I just said, if you have questions, I will answer them. Yeah, so there are several already. There's an official module for 3.5 edition, I think it was 3.5, Dungeons and Dragons for doing this, all right? And this sort of thing. It generally includes it generally, the thing is, I don't think it goes the right way. I don't think any of this goes the right way. These modules are almost always about, oh, what species can bang, what's the product of these species banging. I don't think that's right. That's not really sexy roleplay. It's more facts. It's fact sheet biology, right? I think you would need to sort of really approach it from the ground up. And I think you could start with, and you would not have to make this exclusively monoamorous, but you could start with some of the work that has been done in duo roleplay systems, because there are duo roleplay systems where one person is running for another person that have some mechanics and systems in there, first of all, so that you don't die instantly, but also to customize it specifically to the needs of that one person. And I think that is where you're going to want to ground up. Now, you can obviously expand that to more people, but you're going to want to start with those considerations. So start with the personalization considerations of duo RPGs. I don't think they're called duo. Is it duet? Duet? It might be duet RPGs. And I think really you don't want to include things you don't find sexy, right? You're likely to not need a full combat system. Hopefully none. But you never know. I mean, you never know. Don't include things you don't find sexy. And I would say you want something that's more... Well, you don't want randomness. Like, cut out the randomness, right? And that's totally possible. You can make RPGs without randomness. It's just because one of the big RPGs... One of the first big RPGs was based off a wargame, and wargames need randomness, mostly. Even then, they don't 100% need randomness. You could consider chess to be a wargame, right? And there's no randomness in that. But generally, they do. They do thrive off randomness. But one of the first big RPGs is based off wargaming, and that's why there's so much combat, and that's why there's so much random dice rolling. But you don't need those. You could make an RPG with no dice rolling at all, and in fact, later on I will show you the one I've made. Gotcha. Vertical integration. Welcome in, Iris. Good to see you. I thought you just started streaming. Did something go wrong with it? So those are the starting points for making an RPG system for sexy roleplay. Really start from scratch. is what I would say, because the stuff that is out there isn't really built to support that. Have we got any other questions that I need to add on as well? What would BDSM stand for as a TTRPG name? Oh, God, alright. Fine. It's getting worse. I'm putting your names next to these so that you have accountability. There we go. We'll add that on. All right. Rose asks, how do you feel about Fatal? Honestly, it's a bit of a meme, you know. I have read it. There are versions you can get hold of. I haven't bought it, I'll tell you that. I think it's just bad, you know. It's not well thought out. It includes things purely for shock value. That's not really fun. But you know, that's it. I in general, I don't think about Fatal at all, and I don't think it has any bearing on the hobby other than jokes. And we can just let it go. Bean asks a genuine question. I'm shocked, so we're going to get to this one. We're going to spend a bit of time on this because I have a lot of thoughts on this, actually. Do you think the computer TTRPG system adaptations works? Was it a good choice to base Baldur's Gate et al. On a pen and paper system? So the first and obviously flippant answer is that without a pen and paper system, Baldur's Gate wouldn't exist. But on the other hand, there are nuances to this. So historically, a lot of RPGs that we now have that are not called CRPGs, things like Final Fantasy and all that, have been based off of TTRPGs as well. They're like Final Fantasy threw in a ton of monsters from the Monster Manual and have since then had to change them. But there are a lot of shared mechanics that work fine, but you do have to change things. And there are games that change more than others. Baldur's Gate changes, I think, more than you expect. Certainly more than players expect. I've run for players who've been like, I would like to throw this potion as a bonus action to heal someone. I'm like, that's not how this works. I'm afraid. You cannot do that in the game. But you can in Baldur's Gate. And, you know, I've had players be like, oh, I've done this. I've used my action to do this. I would now like to shove them. Because in Baldur's Gate, you can do that as a bonus action. But you can't in the tabletop. And there are some things you can do at the tabletop that you can't do in Baldur's Gate. So there are... You got to adapt. It's an adaptation, right? It's like, look at the Odyssey movie. The Odyssey movie is not one-to-one Homer's Odyssey. It's an adaptation because the one-to-one Homer's Odyssey would just be awful on screen. So, generally speaking, I think they work. I think they shouldn't be rigid. Weirdly, Solasta, which is a very rigid adaptation, it's still not 100% rigid, but it's much closer to D&D than many of the others. Does work pretty well, actually. And I think it benefits from just having some really good UI work in it. Really stunningly good UI work that makes the game easy to play. Conversely, Baldur's Gate simplifications and all that do improve the game when it's a CRPG, but there are some things you can do on a computer that you can't do at a table, or at least not without slowing the game down. And slowing the game down is a big problem that TTRPG designers worry about a lot. If the game is slow, especially in combat, you're going to have people switching off because it's not their turn. They're doing nothing for maybe 20 minutes, and that's awful. And maybe you're only doing one scene in this shared interactive fiction in an entire session, and then it's 2 weeks before the next thing happens, and that scene was a fight. So, generally speaking, there will be more complex things that you can do on a computer because it's able to calculate them really quickly. We are not doing much more than adding, well, in D&D 5e, you're not doing much more than adding up to 10 to a number. You're not subtracting basically any numbers ever, because that is slower than adding. And in general, you're not doing it too many times. As a good example of a game that is a CRPG, that is adapted, technically speaking, from a TTRPG, but has changed it so heavily it is essentially its own system. Owlcat Games' Rogue Trader, which is based on the Rogue Trader TTRPG by Fantasy Flight Games, is heavily different. One of the things that Rogue Trader does that you couldn't do in the TTRPG version is the idea of missed shots hitting other people. Because that becomes an exponentially difficult problem when, let's say you've got 20 enemies, right? You've got 20 enemies. They're all sort of dotted around in front of you. You shoot and you miss with 10 shots, because you might be doing that if you've got like a big machine gun, at a central person. How many of those stray and hit other people? And if they stray and they miss, do they stray and miss another one? Do they stray and miss another one, right? You can do that in a computer very easily. At the table, that is going to be a 10-minute conversation. It's pointless to add that in. It's not adding as much fun as it's taking away by taking time. And when you're designing a TTRPG, you've always got to be thinking, does this add more fun than it takes away? Which is why I dislike Pathfinder so much. So yes, I think computer TTRPG adaptations work. Sometimes they can do things that make the game better. Another thing that Baldur's Gate does that generally you can't do in the tabletop is if a group that are on the same team are next to each other in initiative, they can all go at the same time and make their actions at the same time, because that speeds it up. You can't really do that at the tabletop because you'll have rules questions and things like that. You sort of can. It gets messy. There are alternative initiative systems that kind of do that. And I'm experimenting with one of those for my own RPG, which so far in the playtest, no one has benefited from yet. So it might just be something that goes away. Theoretically, you can, but in practice, it doesn't seem to work. So the answer is yes, but you have to change things, because this is an adaptation. I can't type. There we go. So it's different media. Welcome in, Armadillo. What is a TTRPG? I'm not answering that one. Shot for shot doesn't work across different media. Exactly, Catbat. Yeah. Iris says, RPGs and wargaming without randomness risk becoming solved, or even worse, the game side of the RPG becomes so unimportant that it might just be better not being there. To which I will say, come back to me when they solve chess. Because that is still not solved. And it's not even that complicated a rule system. You know? Yeah, you can absolutely. But I would say that is more of a threat when there are more rigid, granular rules. So as it approaches a board game more and more, like something like chess, absolutely it does risk becoming solved. But there are ways to do things without randomness that are not rigid. Look at improvisation, right? So there are still, you're now bringing in myriad possible situations, like infinite situations instead. So something like Honey Heist, right? You've got two stats, right? Bear and criminal. And you're improvising and just going, I would like to try this, right? That is not a solved system. There is still randomness in that. It doesn't need it. You don't need it. Randomness does have its use and its place. It provides surprise in certain wargaming scenarios. The tactics partly become managing risk, because you're like, okay, if I go there, there's a sort of 80% chance that I'm going to hit, but if I miss, then that's not going to go well. But it also brings in missing, which sucks. No one likes missing. All right. People don't even hugely like being missed that much. You unless you're specifically building to not be hit, or if it's a particularly tense moment, not getting hit isn't actually that interesting for you. It's not even that satisfying. It is if you are specifically being built not to hit. Oh, sorry, not to be hit. because I did for 4th edition, and let me tell you, Keith's tears when he realized he had to roll a 19 or a 20 only to hit me. That was delightful and delicious, but in general, an average sort of character is not going to really enjoy it that much. And if you attack and miss, you're waiting 20 fucking minutes before it's your go again, and you've done nothing. So there are huge downsides to randomness in games. Huge downsides. And I don't think enough people consider them when they're making their own system. It's sort of a cargo cult programming sort of vibe, where we've always done randomness. Okay, but why? Cabad's asking an interesting question. Will I run a chess RPG? We'll get back to that later, because I think you could. I think you could design a chess RPG very easily. Hi, McNancy. Thank you for the follow. All right. Ben asks, who's my favorite player? First of all, it's not you, Ben, for asking that question. I think...
Oh, fuck.
Oh, thank you for the subscription as well, McNancy. I don't know what the alerts are doing. That should only be... that should actually finish that intro. I'm going to blame Twitch on that one. Ben is not my favorite player for asking this question. Now, I am not going to say who my favorite player is, because I do not think I have one. And I know that's a bit of a cop-out, but I genuinely don't think I have one, because it's situational. I know that my players are very good at certain things. And those all combine to make a really good experience, right? No one's good at everything, but my players in general are each good at a certain thing. So instead, what I'm going to think about here is what makes a good player here for me, right? So I will start with improvisation. And I'm not talking like improv, yes, anding, although that is helpful. You know, if you've got a group who know how to do that, you can have a really fun time. But actually thinking outside the box. Instead of looking at just the rules, imagine the world, right? Imagine the world as real and try to operate as if the world around you is real. That is super interesting for a GM, especially someone like me who's run hundreds of sessions. I don't really care what your rules let you do, okay? I mean, I want you to follow the rules in general. My general guidance is anything in the player's book you can do if it says you can do it. You know, and that's where I'm never going to say no, unless there's like real extenuating circumstances. But I also want you to be doing stuff that's not in that book. I don't want you to just only have the ideas the designers have had. I want you to have your own ideas as well, and thinking outside the box, interacting with the world as if it is real and genuinely there, going, oh, can I swing off of that chandelier? I don't have the swing off chandeliers ability on my character sheet, but can I swing off of it and jump through the air and try and slash them with my cutlass? That would be awesome. Yes, it would be awesome, and it's way better than anything the fucking designers have written. Think outside the box. Absolutely makes a good player. Secondly is to let others shine. All right. Try to involve them in your things. If you, particularly with a quiet player, quiet players are fine. You know, first of all, this is a take I don't think everyone agrees with, but it's okay to let quiet players have a quiet moment. Not all of them want to be involved all the time. They don't want to have to think about that. They're having enough time trying to think of what their abilities let them do, and they're trying to plan or something like that. But sometimes there are ones who don't get so involved in the conversations and all that because they're being talked over a little bit, right? And it's my job to really sort of step in and try and sort of manage that. But other players who are doing that as well are also really helpful. And the best way they can do that is by involving those people in their schemes. So if your character is going to try to break in to a warehouse, maybe, you know, and maybe the ranger's quite quiet and you're the rogue, and you're like, Ranger, you're real good at climbing. Do you reckon you can get up there and jimmy that window open so that I can get in? Put a rope up so I can get in. That's involving them. It's involving them with stuff that they're really good at. And of course, giving them the chance to say no. All are really good. So involving all the players. And the third one, I'm not going to go into the... You could probably do an entire stream on this. But the third thing is talking to the other characters. Something a lot of players do is only interact with the NPCs. And they don't interact with the other players that much. Or the other player characters. Have a moment where you turn around and you talk. Right? Your characters are working together all the time. They're going to these dangerous areas. Have moments where you sit down and you go, this is rough. You remember that time we were in so-and-so and we did that, right? How are you feeling? How are you getting on? Right? Treat them like they're real as well. And that's great because it lets me then plan to do more evil shit to you. But this is also partly on GMs, right? Because GMs are often running to a relatively tight schedule for their stuff. Depends on the type of game, of course. But sometimes it's like, okay, we've got to get on to the next thing. And that doesn't give people breathing room. It's real tough. And it's something I mess up as well. But a player who's got the urge to talk to other players, that's great. That's great. And something that these are all things all my players do. And that's why I don't have a favorite. Okay, how's this question I don't fully understand, so I'm going to try do my best to answer this. What's a tier list of your next RPG fuckability tier list? So my assumption is this is referring to Monster Manual Smash or Pass, which is a series we ran on Twitch for 2 years, I think, and is currently being edited up and put onto YouTube. It's a fantastic series. It's shockingly good for Dungeon Masters. It is not just, oh, let's look at 5 monsters and have a little laugh. We go into a lot of information about all of these monsters in a humorous way. I strongly recommend watching it. It's been quite popular. I'm pretty happy with it, and I think we all have a great time as well on there. That's being edited up. I don't think we're doing another one after this, though. I think there were talks during the time of like, oh, there are other books. We can do the monsters from there. But it's such a huge thing that I think I don't really want to water it down by doing more afterwards. It is my thing. We might do something as a group, like silly. We've got no plans for it. But we might. I'm not going to say no. You know, I'm not going to close that door. But it was a lot, you know. I think we put we took a real interesting spin on it, one that's hard to market to people, because I do genuinely think you shouldn't see it as a comedy video. There's a lot of comedy in it, but you should also see it as like an informational resource, because I came away learning about so many monsters that I had never run or used, and I'd be like, this is really cool. I really want to use this, you know, in this context, or this is a really cool idea of how to use this. I don't think we'll do another one though, because it's so much work. It is so much work to do them. I mean, if 2 million people watched them, and you know, it made enough money that I could pay the people to be there, then maybe. But like, they were all doing this for free, and I don't think I can lock them into doing this sort of thing again. And that was so much, and I hugely appreciate that they stuck through the whole thing. And we had a great time with it as well. We were having a great time, but it's a lot. It's 2 years, so I don't think there will be another one. is my answer. But you never know. You never know. There's so much fun when you read the books cover to cover. Absolutely that. But we were also just doing a lot of like context around it as well. A lot of historical context and things like that. Iris was bringing in a lot of information from outside of the books, from like other editions and things like that. Goggles was as well. We also had a lot of personal anecdotes of times we've used these, interesting ways they've been used for us. and Catbat has so much D&D info now that they've never used because of that series. Yeah, you just got to run some D&D. So the tier list is F for all of them because they're not happening, I'm afraid. You got to learn about the Gary Gygax Guide to Racism, yes, and sexism. Oh, McNancy has a question. Ooh, that's a good one. Wow. I'm not used to good questions on this, so hang on, I'll put that at the end. Nancy asks, what in your opinion are the major factors in whether or not a new TTRPG is going to be a breakout success? I don't know if I can answer that, because I've never had a breakout success, but I'll do my best to answer on things I think that you certainly should do, and that you will benefit from. Because I do think there are some things that I've certainly seen people doing that are really good ideas. But yeah. Hugs asks, 5 TTRPGs for 5 different moods. Please include horny for the bards. You all want horny, don't you? See, this is different from doing a sex RPG. A horny mood RPG can be very different indeed. I'm not sure what I'd put in there. I'm not sure what I put in that segment. Part of it is trying to sort of lock it down. And I don't want to put RPGs in there that I don't know enough about, because I know like Thirsty Sword Lesbians exists, but I don't know how like on the nose that title is because I've not yet read it. I think I have a copy of it. I haven't yet read it. Good point, Armadillo. I must find Bigfoot and bang him. So that is something I have played with goggles. It's a solo journaling RPG, but there you go. I must find Bigfoot and bang him. It does everything it says on the tip. Let's have a look at some other moods. Let's do dread. Let's do or just fear in general. Horny, fear. What other moods? Happiness. Rose, you gotta give me some slack here. Thirsty does not equals horny IMO. We're not going to drill down to the exactly right one. Hangry, I know hangry. We can do hangry. we gotta have some leeway. Iris has a question as well. What is your opinion of healing in TTRPGs? Do you prefer healing being weaker and less available, or do you think more access to healing would work better? That's a good question as well. Good lord, what is all this going on? Iris asks. Look at this. People coming up with good questions all of a sudden. I'll come back to that. Hangry's good. I got one for that. Horny, fear, happiness, hangry, and let's put in rage. Right. Fear. I think Merkberg is a pretty good fear game. I don't think it's not necessarily horror, but it's pretty good at giving you this sort of sense of fear as you play. However, I'm actually going to put Dread, because I think Dread is the closest to actual fear from its mechanics that you can get. And the reason Dread has this sense of fear that is because it's very tangible in its mechanics. Now, there are a few games about like burning like 12 candles, 10 candles, 12 candles. That may be as well very good, but I think Dread's tangible fear comes from the fact that when you do something risky, you don't roll dice, you pull a block from a Jenga tower. And obviously, as you do more risky things, that tower gets weaker and weaker and weaker, and if the tower falls, you die. It doesn't matter what you're doing, you die. So you are constantly feeling very worried as you play this. And I think that's a really good mechanic. That's a really good way of using mechanics. No randomness. Well, I mean, technically randomness in that ish. I mean, strictly speaking, no, because physics is deterministic. Unless it's the Havoc physics engine, which is not deterministic. But yeah, that's a great one. Happiness. What is like the happiest RPG? Because there are a fair few, I think. There's a fair few like really happy RPGs, but I'm not even sure what I would put here. Hmm. I think this is an interesting question. Honey Heist, Nevitling. Yeah. I mean, Honey Heist is a very happy game. But you know what I think is even happier? And it's that kind of giddy joy. Yeah, exactly, Iris. It's Kobolds Ate My Baby. Kobolds Ate My Baby is a game where you die approximately 5 to 6 times per session. You're going to die 2 to 3 times an hour. And character creation is very quick. Gamma World is good as well. I have very much enjoyed Gamma World. Yeah, Gamma World is a good shout. But when Kobolds Ate My Baby, you can die all the time, but you'll die for a very stupid reason. You can die because when you get to a road, you have 2 choices. One, do you look both ways? Or do you not look both ways? Either way, if you look both ways, you are angering the god of kobolds for not being reckless. And it genuinely might just get struck by lightning and killed. If you don't look both ways, you are going to get hit by something random. And every map has multiple roads, so it's generally fantastic. I lost a kobold once in a game where we were trying to steal a large orange baby from a big white house. I lost a character because Lars Ulrich and the MPAA arrived and just started slinging spells at me. So I think Happiness is Kobolds Ate My Baby. But Gamma World's a good shout. I really enjoyed the game. I played with Goggles and Talia. Was Bree in that one as well? I can't remember. It was a while ago. Run by Keith. It was a one-shot in which I play. So for, character creation is sort of randomized. I played a 4-armed gorilla whose primary motivation is workplace safety, called Furious George. And he'd like attack people with bent bits of rebar and stuff like that. Goggles was playing a business mushroom named Garricus. Lars Ulrich, did I download a car? That must have been it. I must have downloaded the car. Exactly. And I can't remember. Oh god, Talia was playing a hard-light hologram version of John Philip de Souza, the inventor of the sousaphone. Absolutely mad game. Really good fun. Really good fun. I think Gamma World is wonderful. I'm surprised they haven't tried to bring that back for 5th edition D&D yet, especially with like Dark Sun and all that coming in. I'm genuinely surprised they haven't brought that one back. Yes, that is the most Talia sentence ever said about her. It was great. It was genuinely great. Hangry, I already have this. It's called Bacto's Terrifying Cuisine. You are effectively in Iron Chef or like the Great British Bake Off or etc. etc. But the place that you're doing the cooking, you've got to go and get the ingredients from effectively a dungeon. So this is hangry, absolutely. Like a demon has kidnapped you and told you to make him the greatest meal ever made. Yeah. Rage. Rage is interesting. I'm going to put a suggestion here that I don't know enough about really to properly suggest it, but I think from everything I've seen written about it, I think this is Rage, and that is God Killer. God Killer is a duet RPG where one of you is God and one of you is the God Killer, and the God every time is a different concept, and the God Killer has to destroy that concept. It is a different powerful concept. It could be the concept of capitalism. It could be the concept of death. It could be anything. And I think God Killer is probably the greatest expression of rage that's out there that I know of. But there's certainly more. There's certainly more. Rage is a common one. It's particularly in like mecha RPGs. Rage is very popular. Monopoly. Yeah, fair. I can see Monopoly as well. Absolutely. Yeah. I think God Killer is one on there. Speaking of mecha RPGs, Rose asks, what TTRPG should people play if they want to fuck the giant robot? The easy answer here is Lancer. I don't necessarily think Lancer's a good actual answer, because the giant robots generally aren't doing much on their own. You could put an NHP in there, non-human person, but then you're not fucking the giant robot, you're fucking the NHP, really. I mean, you are, strictly speaking, fucking the giant robot, but I don't know. I don't think it's not the robot doing the decisions, right? Now, there's a couple of others. There's a game by Susanna Grace called Chevalier. However, I refuse to call it anything other than Chula, because it's spelled CHVLR. And that's a sort of mecha anime sort of thing. Where you are like magical girls getting into mechs. I feel like it has that energy a bit stronger. Is there a sexy TTRPG based on the Iron Giant? I don't think so. Beam Saber is Forged in the Dark, so it's got more narrative focus. I mean, that might let you, yeah. Does a Warforged count as a giant robot? No, they are robots, but they don't count as... There are giant Warforged, but... not the normal Warforged. There are Warforged Titans in Eberron. And there's, I think one of the expansions famously has a Titanic Warforged that you kill it at half health, but it gets back up in 7 days unless you go inside of it and fight your way through. Effectively, it has a dungeon that comes with the monster. So when you fight the monster, it's like it crashes to the ground and a dungeon opens up. You better go in there, which is a very cool concept. I love sentient dungeons, but yeah. I gotta put Lancer, honestly, because that's where they're going. You know, the robot touchers are in the Lancer community. You're going to be among other people. Hugs asks, what TTRPG should you play if you do not want to fuck the giant robot? To answer that, I think you'd have to have one without giant robots in. So that already gets rid of Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder, Draw Steel, Lancer, obviously, Stars Without Number. Maybe Honey Heist? We're going to say Honey Heist. We're going to say Honey Heist on this. Ikias, possibly the most unhinged question of all of them. Do you think Chris Perkins' reputation for being evil to his players stems from resentment at the muted reception of DOS title Traffic Department 2192, for which he served as story writer? Gonna take a moment to think about this one. Vampire the Masquerade is a good shout, Nevik, actually, because you're going to be wanting to fuck everything else. Very good point. Rose says, surely to not fuck the giant robot, a giant robot must exist. What is that? Is that the old Sartre is in a restaurant and he asks for he asks for deviled eggs, and the waiter goes off and comes back from the kitchen and says, I'm so sorry. We're out of deviled eggs. Oh, no, I've completely messed this up. Sartre asks for a coffee with no milk. And the barista says, I'm so sorry, we're out of milk. Would you prefer a coffee with no water instead? God damn it, I completely messed it up. Anyway, this question is nuts. I don't think, actually, is just going to be my answer to this. Reputation for being evil to his players stems from resentment at the muted reception of DOS title Traffic Department 2192, for which he served as story writer. I presume he doesn't think about that at all. He is now, I think, working on Daggerheart. I think he's pretty thoroughly working on Daggerheart. Along with... Is he there with the other Crawford as well. I think it's Crawford and Perkins both went to Daggerheart. I don't think so. Next question. Rose is back with, what TTRPG should people play if they want the giant robot to fuck them? We're back on it. Good lord. It's Lancer again. Okay. Rose then asks, has anybody made a TTRPG about making TTRPGs? And if so, would you play it? I don't know of one. I wouldn't be surprised if someone's made a one-page RPG about it, or a journaling RPG maybe. There are TTRPGs, and this is using it relatively loosely now, sort of journaling game style things where you end up making a dungeon. There's like Ex Novo and Ex Umbra. There's Microscope, for example, for making worlds. That sort of thing is sort of getting there. I don't know if any that would make the rules set as well. That's a complex thing to do, and I'm not sure that you can sort of rigidly boil that down to certain steps. Mind you, I'm always shocked that, you know, world building can be rigidly boiled down to a few steps in something like Microscope, and it works very well. So maybe it's possible. Would I play it? I'd give it a go, I think. I don't know if I would use it to build RPGs. I don't use Microscope to build worlds. I don't use Ex Nova or Ex Umbra. I have done it before, and I am always very impressed with the results, but it's so much work. It's always more work than you expect, and less fun. So generally, I don't think... I mean, I'd try it, but I don't think I'd use it actually to design something. It may be possible. I'd try it. All right, we're now actually at the live questions. We've done it, everyone. Kaba asks, say I wanted to shift D&D currency to cheese money. What cheeses should I use, and what's the cheese to gold conversion rate? Okay, so I'm qualified to answer this. First of all, I'm British. We love cheese. I would be more qualified if I was French or Italian, of course. But secondly, I play a character who's all about his cheese. So we need some low-tier cheese for copper pieces, right? I'm assuming we're doing we're shifting D&D currency. So we need copper, we need silver, we need gold, we don't need electrum. We need platinum. Yeah, you know what? Let's put electrum in. It's the joke currency. It's like it's like what's the one? Scottish pounds. Everyone's like, is that real? Yes. You have to keep reassuring people that it's legal tender. Okay. Copper. Low tier cheese here. We're going to use American squeezy cheese, which is, I don't think, real cheese, like legally speaking, in many places. So we're going to start that off at the copper. Silver, we want something that's a workhorse here. You know, silver is a very commonly used coin. What is something that's common? I think we've got to go cheddar. Cheddar's the silver cheese. Okay. Rose makes a good point that it would be impractical to have squeezy cheese because you can't hold it. Good point. A good point. Cheese singles. Cheese singles for copper. You can just, like, you could roll them up. Like, you could have a roll of bills. There we go. Cheddar for silver. Like actual cheddar. Real cheddar. Hashtag real cheddar is silver, I think, because it's a very common cheese. You see it everywhere. Mozzarella is also an option, but I kind of want to save mozzarella for a little higher because I think mozzarella does deserve better. It's just that some things are called mozzarella that aren't. So, silver is cheddar. Gold now. This is the standard by which all cheeses are measured. In a way, you could argue cheddar should be here because cheddar is sort of like the ubiquitous cheese, right? Ubiches, as the games company is called. I don't think so. I think this is mozzarella. Both copper and cheese singles are the most melty. Very good point, McNancy. Very good point. See, it all works. Electrum, blue cheese. All right. Most people don't have coherent thoughts about it. It might have some uses, but generally, I'm all right, thanks. I do like blue cheese on a burger. I will say that. I don't really like it on anything else. It kind of has this chemical taste to it, almost like whiteboard eraser. Like there's almost like an acetate sort of florally, not even floral, like chemically note to it that I've never really enjoyed as much. But great on a burger. I will say great with beef. Now, platinum. What's a top tier cheese? Relatively less common, admittedly just less common than blue cheese, so we've got quite a lot of leeway here. I'm going to say I'm going to put my favorite cheese. Osserati, that stuff is mwah, love it. Electrum also has a metallic taste, good point. So does copper, to be fair. We can now confirm Nick has tasted whiteboard eraser and considers it to be great with beef. Look, what I meant is I've smelt it. I've smelt it, and it tastes like that smell. Okay. We've done that. Most important question, the cheeses. All right. Next one. Summer asks, what would BDSM stand for as an RPG name? So, we're using it as an initialism. We've got dice. Right? We've got dice. So, we're off to a good start. I literally don't know what else to put on here. Minis. Paper? No. Snacks? Maps. Maps is way better than way better. Snacks I will accept. Beer and pretzel sort of style. Honestly, we could do beer, dice, snacks, and maps. That's BDSM. Blindfolds? No, not the blindfolds. We'll cut that bit out. Baddies. Baddies is not bad. Baddies is not bad. I'll take maps instead of mechanics. Skills is good as well. We're going to do baddies, dice, skills, and maps. There you go. BDSM. We've solved BDSM. Okay, another question. Kappa says, will you run a chess RPG? Why am I'm missing some questions? Wait, I'm missing some questions. I scrolled past several questions. I was like, I swear Brie asked some questions. Hold on a sec, we're going to go back to these. I got distracted by Ben, apparently. Okay, so Rose asks, which TTRPG system in printed form tastes the best? None of them. Alright, I'm not dignifying it. Then Brie asks something that isn't a question. Biggest red and green flags in someone new to a table. Red flag. Red flag for me would be constantly or insistent arguing with the GM. And what I mean by this, and I have had players do this, where they, and this isn't any of you know, or this was part of a paid game, they have a character concept in mind, and they have misinterpreted the rules in order to support that. Now, I can be flexible. But in this case, they had a character that was purely built for mechanics. They hadn't really thought of any of the I hadn't really thought any of the roleplay side of it. Like, they weren't thinking of a character really as sort of a bag of mechanics. But they'd also got those mechanics wrong. Some of this is down to D&D not being extremely clear about its mechanics, but yeah, they'd had them wrong, and I went, okay, so from what I've... so here's my interpretation of this rule. And they went, that kind of ruins my idea. I'm like, well, first of all, why... You shouldn't be running an idea. I didn't say that, but that's a first like note. Don't run an idea, because what is your idea doing when you're not in combat? But I was like, okay, so here's my my initial instinct. We're gonna go with that for now, and then I will have a look at it later and have a look through the rules, have a look through what everyone is saying, and see if it conforms. I then later went through the rules and went, I'm sorry, I think I'm correct on this one because of this, and this. And they just kept coming back with, right, but it says this. And I'm like, yeah, you are still misreading this sentence. I can't remember the exact example anymore, sadly. But, yeah, they were like, just because it says that, just because it doesn't say that you can't do this doesn't mean it's giving you carte blanche permission to do this thing, and that the rule works like this, because the game works based on broad rules and then exceptions, right? That's how most TTRPGs work. They define a broad rule and then they give you exceptions. But your exception is more specific. It's always more specific, and where it's not being specific, you go back to the broad rule, right? I don't own that many printed games, Rose. I can't really tell you. I have Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. That's it. I don't buy the printed games because I don't have much space in my house. So I've got all the PDFs instead. So insistent arguing with the gyms, like not accepting a ruling, I think is a red flag, because I think that person is just going to be trouble. I have had it with a few like Nordmark games at times before as well, where people are just like, yeah, they've got their heart set on something, and I can understand being so excited that you have your heart set on something, but it just doesn't work out that way, right? Green flag. Green flag is someone who's new as well. This is tricky. I've had a few new players recently who are just great. And I'm just trying to work in my head, what was it that made them great, right? What made them great new players? I think there's just a huge bundle of things. I'm just trying to unpick them. Playing the GM, Peter, is good. And it's strictly in the player handbook. I think... I would agree willingness to collaborate is a big one. I also think, you know what I'm going to say? Feeling excitement or expressing it. Expressing excitement for others. I think that's genuinely is like the golden, like core thing that you can do is be everyone else's hype man in a game. And that is just, you could be just an awful player, but that's going to paper over a lot. Please don't be an awful player. Like, absolutely do everything else. But if someone rolls an nat 20 and you were like cheering away, they're going to have just so much more of a great time. If someone has a really good idea and you go, oh, that's genius, they're going to have a good time. If they do a really good move and you're like, oh, that's an incredible, like, idea, they're going to have a really good time. And that becomes infectious. And it just improves the whole mood of the table. I agree, Iris, on Iris is saying an attempt to be creative and interact with the world. I think that was something, yeah, down here on Ben asking what my favorite player was. That is something that I certainly think is really good about veteran players. I don't think necessarily it's a red flag if a new player isn't doing that. Sorry, my hair is tickling me. It's getting too long again. But it sure is a green flag. Yeah, because you don't have to then, like, hope that they develop that later. Anything in the favorite player section, honestly, is also a green flag. Bree then asks, is there a question you hope someone is going to ask? The answer to that is quick. It is no. There are merely a lot of questions I was hoping people wouldn't ask, and they did. No, I don't have any questions I hope people ask. If there's a topic I want to talk about, I'll just talk about it. Then there's and they were all asked by Rose, and one was asked by Ikifu. Brie asks, opinions, again, not a question, opinions on systems that are basically two separate systems that alternate. For example, Lancer using something like Blades in the Dark's rules for pilots and something like 4th edition's rules for mechs. This is an interesting question. This is a very interesting question to me, and I think it's quite a nuanced answer. I think in general, it's a nice idea that doesn't work in practice, because teaching players a rule set is already hard enough. But there are downsides to having one set of rules for everything. D&D ultimately has one rule only, really, and that is you roll a d20, you add the relevant number, and you compare it to another target, right? There are additional rules on top of that, but it's like the core thing is one thing, right? And that makes it pretty easy to learn, right? There are some nuanced differences between what an attack roll is, and like for the fact attacks can crit and skills can't, things like that. It's the difference between a saving throw, terminology-wise. But ultimately, there's like one thing. And the same is true with Pathfinder. The same is true with Draw Steel. Again, some slight nuances, but yeah. However, I think it is important to understand that these modes of play are different, so they can be better served with different rules custom made for that type of play. But I think if you do that, the rule system has to be simpler, because otherwise you're asking people to pick up two very complicated rule sets, and then they're not going to have space in their heads for it, because you're catering to diehards who are like turbo RPG fans, but you're also catering to someone who's being brought along and has played maybe 2 sessions in 2 months and is like having a great time with their friends and is trying, but you know, they got a busy job or they got kids or something, you know. You got to cater kind of to all of that. I mean, you don't have to. You can decide you're not going to cater to all of them, but yeah. Magnancy says, I think more games do this than people realize. Lancer is just more transparent about it. I think that is also true. The systems you build on to core action resolution mechanics do then differ, you know, gradually as things go on. Like D&D doesn't differ that much. Draw Steel sort of does by adding on, you know, abilities that you can use versus perks, which are sort of closer to like feats. And so that changes a little bit, and you know, skills don't really apply during combat, but they do during narrative, and it sort of spreads and separates out a little bit more like that. Blades in the Dark is basically one core action resolution because they don't have a combat system, really. But yeah, explicitly going, you know, we're having 2 completely different dice resolution mechanics and systems, and strapping them together, I think, is generally a bad idea. And I do think it's a bad idea in Lancer. And I don't think I'm alone in that, because I'm certain Tom Bloom has said the same. Because Icon is not doing that. Currently, Tom Bloom doesn't know what Icon is going to do for this. But yeah. Yeah, I think it's tricky, and I think it's something you've got to think about. You can't just cargo cult it in. Magnesis, you think with Blades, the crew phase feels like a different game? I think that's fair. I think that is fair. Yeah, I suppose it's whether you're looking at two systems that happen sort of side by side or like a meta system on top, because the crew system is sort of a meta system over the original one, but it is two separate phases. I'd agree there. Whereas something like Lancer, where I don't know, it's two phases there with Lancer, because in something like D&D, you could enter and exit a combat in the middle, right? And then, do some narrative stuff and then jump back in. And you could even use the narrative rules in the combat. In Lancer, it's sort of technically permitted, but doesn't realistically happen, right? There's a more of a de facto separation there. Whereas in D&D, you're somewhat encouraged to still be using skill checks and stuff. So, yeah. Yeah, no, I would agree. The more I'm sort of thinking it out and sort of sounding it out in my head, I agree that, yeah, those two are a real separation of it. I also agree with Keith that it's not anywhere near as much as Lancer separates them. Though I would say that I think it's more of a separation than the similar logic to characters. I think there is genuinely a hefty chunk of difference to them. I agree that perspective is also a difference, yeah. Sorry, Rose has added a question. So I'm going to add that to the list as well. I thought this was going to be an hour of chatting. I'm getting worried that this is going to spiral into something much longer. Because I think someone else asked something. Wait. Rose asked a good question. Oh, next time I don't intend to do this. Oh, Armadillo. Armadillo's got a question. Next time I intend to do a different thing. I'm just going to get someone on and talk about something. Okay. So, where were we? Did we finish with the Brie one? Yeah, so my general opinion is that if you do it, the system should be either similar enough that you can sort of transfer your knowledge, or they need to be simpler. In general, I prefer the systems that have a single resolution mechanic and then go on that. But having said that, my own system, which I will show later on, or a bit of later on, does have different dice resolution mechanics depending on what you're doing. It has something called the approach phase. So it's called Breach RPG. The idea is that you're sort of doing a Die Hard. Basically, you're doing a Die Hard, the RPG. The approach is all the bits outside of having a fight where you're trying to get in the right position, you're trying to set things up. That's all sort of handled narratively. That uses things like exploding dice and things like that to sort of escalate tensions and stuff like that. Whereas the combat is very different. It's sort of a pastiche of Warhammer Kill Team and a little bit of like Deadlands, I guess. Savage Worlds a little bit. With a few other things thrown in as well. So it is different, but yeah. My answer is that it really is a case-by-case basis. Do it well and it's fine. Don't do it well and that's going to be bad. I'm going to move forward a bit. The light is causing a shadow behind me. Okay, so we did the ones I missed. Let's go on to Kabat's question. All right, this is a question I was looking forward to. Will you run a chess RPG? I think you would first have to design one that uses chess as its mechanic. Now, this is interesting because chess is relatively well known. You would not be running the exact rules of chess, though. Because How do you do that? Well, unless it's a duet RPG, how do you do that, right? But you can take a lot of the movement-based stuff from chess, and you can put that into RPGs. There are very much games that are using those that are out, like there's Garbanzo, the Balatro-like game using chess where you're moving your pieces around and adding modifiers and stuff like that. I don't see why your classes couldn't be based on various movement types. Right? So the difficulty then doesn't become a randomness. It's, can you land on the right square? Can your allies give you buffs that let you move around and land on the right square, etc., etc.? I think you could do it. I think you could do it. It would be a much more wargamey style of game. It would be closer to your phone, you know, your 4th editions and all that. But then I think about that and I think, well, maybe you can do a narrative one where you are the pieces in chess on a chessboard. I think you could. I think you could. Yeah, every teammate's piece would be every teammate's class would be tied to a piece. Absolutely. You'd have a knight, you'd have a bishop, you'd have, you know, and so on. You could do things like that. I do think it would be doable. I think it's work. It's a chunk of work, but I do think it's doable. Will I run one? I don't know. There's too many RPGs out there. It would have to be excellent, I think, is my answer for that. It would have to be better than just a standard RPG. McNancy asks, what in your opinion are the major factors in whether or not a new TTRPG is going to be a breakout success? So this is a really good question that I obviously can't authoritatively answer because I don't have a breakout success RPG. But I think there are a couple of factors. First of all, are you established, right? And by that I mean to normal people. Okay. If you have a large Twitter following, not going to help. If you have a large Blue Sky following, Mastodon following, not going to help. If you have 10 million subscribers on YouTube, maybe you have a chance here. A lot of TTRPG projects, in general, this includes actual plays, as someone who's run a few, they are more successful if you are already successful. It's relatively easy to see that. You know, I don't really need to explain why. You know, portable audiences and things like that. But also, I would challenge you to find, let's say in the last 5 years, an actual play or a TTRPG or whatever, just a commercial project using tabletop that is successful, a breakout success, that does not have a pre-existing name attached to it. Right? Draw Steel, hugely successful. Loads of people subscribe to Matt Colville's channel, right? Like, he was on some Critical Role talk show or thing, like, before that. Like, one of the Critical Role players was his, like, dialogue editor for his books. Like, come on. In general, do you know people? You know, influencers and all that who are going to spread it around. Because reaching people is a nightmare there. Reaching people is an absolute nightmare. Yeah. Draw Steel isn't popular, Matt. Draw Steel is popular, I will say. Like, a lot of people have been approaching me to run Draw Steel commercially. And I'm already running one game of it. Rose says arguably Draw Steel was successful at first because it was the Colville RPG. I think that is correct. Yes, 100%. Because what it is 4th edition again. It is more popular than many other non-D&D RPGs. Yeah, I would say Daggerheart is doing better than Draw Steel, but Draw Steel is probably doing better than everything that isn't Daggerheart or Pathfinder or D&D. Blades, even Blades isn't anywhere near, I would say. And that's not speaking on the quality of the game. I really like Draw Steel. I know that Draw Steel is not everyone's cup of tea. I really like Draw Steel. But then I really enjoyed playing 4th edition. I just didn't like a few of the things that were because it's, you know, a relatively old game, right? And Draw Steel learnt from those, stood on the shoulders of giants and such. There are many things I don't like about Draw Steel, though. The book's layout is genuinely one of the worst layouts I've ever seen. But I do like a lot of the bits. Few of the rules really are just too vague. And it's in desperate need for errata, but I say the same about Lancer. So, yeah, you got to have an existing audience, effectively. Like, I know that Breach is not going to sell well. I'm fine with it. I'm making it for my own enjoyment, really. You know, I just like to be, you know, having made one, really. The new RPG looks inside 4th edition. It's popular these days. You know, you could argue Lancer is based heavily off of 4th edition, and I'm sure Tom Bloom would not disagree. It's also based heavily off of Final Fantasy Tactics. Your criticism of Draw Steel is just that it's all bits. Do you mean like disparate parts that don't really feel like they connect together? To which I think I could agree with that. Yeah. Yeah. I could agree with that. I think it's got a lot of interesting ideas. And, you know, I really like the complications section, for example. I really like the title rewards, which include, like, built-in things for what to do if there's a TPK you're not expecting, things like that, which is very nice. And I like the class design in general. I think the classes feel great. But yeah, I would agree that a few bits do feel a bit disparate. I don't know if it feels more disparate than something like D&D, which is kind of where it's aiming its thing. It's certainly less disparate. Oh, sorry, certainly more disparate than something like Lancer, which really sort of tightly links everything quite well. Draw Steel, like, to me, feels like it's trying to, while it technically has its own, like, world and all that, and you know, it does bake that in, it is sort of trying to match the sort of D&D you can use your own world here for it, which I like because I always use my own worlds, but I can see not everyone else liking. Feels like a 4E fan watched a bunch of Steal These Mechanics videos. Yeah, could well be pretty accurate. Yeah. The thing I love most about Draw Steel, just on the subject of Draw Steel, is that the map use is dynamic. You can break the world around you, and so you don't look at a wall and go, oh, that thing is blocking me. You go, can I break through that and change the entire map to my benefit, which I think is really nice, and it's something not a lot of games do, because obviously it's hard to sort of represent that in on tabletop, but you can kind of start doing that with virtual tabletops these days. Yeah, I don't think I'd ever run Draw Steel in person. I think that's a nightmare. Yeah, but I agree, it is sort of a big bundle of parts and a big bundle of sort of various different ideas, and it maybe doesn't find a coherent sort of thesis around it. I do agree with Rose that I think that many big TTRPGs have the same problem. I think the solution is less mechanic based. Like, I don't think it's a mechanical solution so much as it's a narrative solution. Lancer, I think, gets past it by having very strong theming all the way through. As an example, I think Blades, to some extent, feels like a bag of mechanics. Once you get past like the core stuff, because you can play with the core stuff, but like once you get into like tiering, and things like that, it starts to feel a little bit like, oh, we've just added this idea on. Quality and tier just feels like position and effect, but we're doing it again and adding it on, and you're like, is this adding much? I'm not so sure. Like, they want to have difficulty based on what you're facing up against. And because they kind of, I mean, that's position and effect already again. And like, yeah. But no, I do agree with that. So yeah, first of all, yeah, are you established? That's going to be your big thing. If you're established, you're going to be way better off at having a breakout of success. You're going to know a lot of people that you've worked with who can help shill your thing, which is great. I also think you're going to get organic, you're going to have fans talking about it, right? Like Guild of Icons, for example, my actual play does not have fans talking about it, really. It has fans, which shocks me every time anything I do has fans. But they're not like going, hey, I think everyone should watch the Guild of Icons on like Blue Sky or anything like that. And that's not to say I think they should be doing that. I never do that about things I enjoy. But once you get a large enough fan base, you do get those people. Because I think fan bases have a sort of multiplicative effect on themselves. People who are fans make other people stronger fans by being fans around them. And it also has a reductive effect when you get to gatekeeping and things like that. We don't need to dive into that as heavy. But it also, I think, has an intensifying effect. And so you get more people who are like, hey, everyone, you're asking for recommendations for actual plays. Well, I know this one called the Guild of Icons, etc., right? So having a large audience is one big factor. The other factor I'm gonna jump in with, I think in this day and age, and this is a relatively recent change, but in this day and age, you need to support tools. You need to support people providing tooling for your game. And this is something Drawsteel did well. Their license allows you to take basically any part of the game and put it into a virtual tabletop extension for Foundry, or to make a character builder. Character builders are so good for accessibility that it is nuts that Wizards of the Coast keeps shutting down the good ones. Nuts. Honestly nuts. Because they constantly want to try to reach new people. They're constantly trying to reach new people. That's why they're doing this Star Wars tie-in and things like that, because then they'll reach the Star Wars fans who are curious about D&D. But they make it too hard to make a character. Sure, they've got D&D Beyond, but D&D Beyond is not that easy to use either. So it is nuts that they shut down all the fan ones. Drawsteel comparatively turned around and went, yeah, just take it. Anything that's got this Drawsteel license, you can just put the text of it in. It's fine. I think they made a misstep by not making the Summoner Drawsteel licensed originally, so you couldn't play that one. But then they then undid that later on. What they said was that if it makes enough money that it's paid for itself, then they release it under the license, so they don't have to worry about not making any more money about it. And they said in the future we're just going to change how we do it so that it's always made enough money by the time we release it. And that's, yeah, I think everyone has got to do that. Like, a bunch of people, myself included, refused to stream any Daggerheart content because the Daggerheart license is dog shit. Like, the Daggerheart license is as bad as the OGL license that they tried to bring in for D&D 5, the OGL 5.1. It is that bad. And they generally get a pass because they are not Wizards of the Coast. But and because they have a sort of, oh, we love these people fandom, a little bit of a sort of, what's the word, a little parasocial. Matt Colville also has a parasocial fandom. But the license is bad. They have a white list of what virtual tabletops are acceptable. So that means new virtual tabletops just simply cannot support Daggerheart until they're big enough to support Daggerheart. And things like that. And it's like, what are you doing? Come on. So if you want to have a chance, let people make tooling. CompCon is another great example of good tooling. Should we just put parasocial fandom to the list? Honestly, yes. Parasocial fandom. Parasocial fandom and tooling. Let people make tools. Because they will do it. They will support it. And they'll make good tools. CompCon is superb. CompCon is sort of semi-officially licensed. The Archive of Nethys for Pathfinder is unofficial. And generally speaking, have had a license for free to use the Pathfinder text. Just let everyone do that. Don't let just the big dogs do it either, because otherwise you won't get any more big dogs. Roasted, I assumed CompCon was first party. I also thought that, because there's like a link to it from it, but it's not. It's actually a third party one. And anyone else can make, like, you can take the rules for Drawsteel and make your own Drawsteel products. That's the other side. Not just tooling. Third party supplements. right? That's the thing. That's the worst part of OGL 5.1. And the best part of the original OGL is that you could make your own D&D adventures and sell them. You could make your own D&D class and sell them. You could make your own Draw Steel classes. You can make your own CompCon, you can make your own Lancer modules and sell them. Because you are never going to be making all of the content unless you, for some reason, 4th edition Wizards of the Coast, where you literally just put out 2 million things on your own because you're the biggest publisher there. You're not going to do it. Let everyone else cover all the bases for you. This is equivalent to like Bethesda are getting people to patch their stuff for you. So tooling and third-party supplements, just have a permissive enough license. You will gain more, so much more by doing that than you will lose. Yeah, entire companies were made by making third-party stuff for D&D. Paizo exists. Kobold Press. Paizo is the biggest one, but Kobold Press also. It is. I can see why Wizards of the Coast wouldn't. Now that they're huge, it's very awful. They shouldn't do it. I can see the evil cogs turning that do that produce that decision. But don't, because you're not them. McNancy has a follow-up of how does Stonetop factor in? I have heard of Stonetop, but I'm just going to have to do a quick Google. I'm going to have to look into that more. I've heard of Stonetop, but I don't know any more beyond that, I'm afraid. I'm always trying to read more. Yes, run me a game of Stonetop, Keith. Rose says, I too have heard of Stonetops. Oh, God. Oh, hey, Godo, welcome in. Oh, you've been posting many messages and I just sort of missed you. Sorry about that. Yeah, sorry about that. we've been busy talking about shit. Good shit, too. Bear with me on this comparison. D&D has the thing that MTV's Teen Wolf had, where a significant part of the community's first interaction is with the fandom rather than the original media, and I fully agree. You thought it was more hype? I mean, I've heard of it, but me not knowing about it doesn't necessarily mean it's not more hyped, honestly. Like, I'm always trying to read more games and all that, but first of all, they're long. Like, my list of games to continue, like, to read, my to read list is huge. So as things come out, I end up missing things. I still haven't read Triangle Agency. I really want to read through that. Delta Green as well. I want to have another read through Vazen. I didn't like how it was written. It does that thing, that sort of faux progressive thing of writing he and then she and then he and like alternating the pronouns. If you're reading this and you're running, please use singular they. The world begs you to use singular they. It's so much easier. It's so much easier to read. Please. Or you know, second person is fine also. You know, a lot of D&D uses second person as well. They is fine though. They is just fine. It's so much easier to read. Amadeus says, I know more about Teen Wolf than D&D, and that's enough to co-sign what you said. Fair enough. Yeah. So, but yeah, I definitely would love to learn more about it. There's a bunch of games I really want to learn more about. There's so many really good ideas out there. Right. How are we doing for time? Oh, we're almost at 2 hours. We got some time. We can keep going. Iris asks, first of all, I'm going to hydrate because I've been talking for 2 hours straight without hydrating. And that would be the height of foolishness. Iris asks, what is your opinion of healing in TTRPGs? Do you prefer healing being weaker and less available, or do you think more access to healing would work better? This is about your tone, the tone of your game, I think. A game like 4th edition Draw Steel benefits from a lot of healing and can build whole classes around it. But on the other hand, it can slow the game down. Now, really, this is just number massage, right? if you think about it, if you have a lot of healing, but you don't have much health, then what you can do is artificially force this nervousness as you get close to 0 health, but then heal back up for most of it. So something like Draw Steel 4th edition, who have healing surges and things like that, which usually do like a third or a quarter of your health, that's a way to sort of keep you near bottom without dying a lot. Now, that sort of artificially makes you feel nervousness a lot more. It's something video games do this as well, this number massage. The health bar that you have, the first half of it will go at normal speed. The second half will go at half speed. So maybe this is 100 health and this second half is 50 health. So that you feel like you're doing a sort of very last minute sort of clutch thing more often. That is a way to do that. Lancer does this as well, by having 4 health bars. You have structure, which is your mech falling apart, but you also then have health. When your health empties, you lose a point of structure, but then your health fills up again. So you have 4 times the health you think you have. But when you take 6 damage and you've got 10 health, suddenly that's very worrying. That's 60% of your health. Your brain thinks that. It's very effective. Even if you play for a long time, it's very effective. Especially as recovering structure is not easy. So it really depends what tone you're going for, because if you've got slow healing, let's say, for example, Stars Without Number, I've been running that recently, the Without Number games in general, as OSR games, you heal very slowly in that. Outside of magical healing, you will heal 1 hit point every 24 hours. Now, that also has a very strong effect on you. By being very sparse with healing, you treasure it more. Healing is genuinely extremely valuable to the extent you will go out of your way to get it. You will go on you maybe even take risks to get it. And that slow healing means that you are more risk averse. So if you want to do something where your players are taking big risks and going on big adventures, have a lot of healing. If you want your players to seriously consider their actions all the time, have a really sort of very cerebral approach to it, have very slow healing, because they can't recover from mistakes, but understand that that is going to punish them if the die rolls badly. And this is perhaps, going back to the theme of today, apparently, do you really need randomness, and how much randomness do you need? How swingy should that randomness be? Because Stars Without Number, something like that, is very swingy. If you are hit with an attack, it could do maybe 1d10 damage, but you've got 6 hit points. So 60% chance, or sorry, 40% chance that you just outright die first attack. That's terrifying. And so you will act in ways to hopefully not cause you to be getting shot, right? But in something like Draw Steel, you're like, yeah, sure. I'll take the damage. I'm a big hero. Big damn hero. So my opinion is it really has to just match the game. Sounds like my answer of what's adding fun rather than taking away. Exactly. I think OSR games do benefit from slow healing, and I think big bombastic games benefit from fast healing. Rose asks, how does DMing for pay differ from DMing casually? This is interesting. I don't think there are as many differences as people think. First of all, I'm on friendly terms with my players. They are all lovely people. We chat. I've seen pictures of their dogs and things like that. You know, I've seen pictures of their rats and you know, their holidays and all that. There are memes still posted in the group chat. It's very similar to a normal game, except I'm getting paid for it. In general, I put more effort into the paid DMing because I feel like, you know, they're paying for it. They deserve it. Otherwise, I act basically the same. You know, I'm not more likely to I'm not more likely to like acquiesce to what they want. I will just say, you know, this is sort of where we're going to go with this for the tone of this game, and if they don't like it, they can leave, and that's fine. I would say maybe there is more player drop in and drop out as people go, you know, I can't really afford to continue playing this, or I'm not enjoying, you know, not enjoying this particular quest, so I'm going to sit out because, you know, money is part of the conversation. But not that much more than like when I ran Nordmark for 20 odd people, you know? And you know, I've got like the first 2 players I've had to start playing are still playing with me. There is some less drop in and drop out. I would say if you've played more than 4 games, you're pretty much there for the full duration, because at that point you already know this is the game you like. But you get a lot of people who join for like 1 or 2 and then drop out. And that didn't really happen so much in Nordmark, because I think they were like, oh, any D&D is better than no D&D, right? Even if it wasn't matching what they enjoyed as much. Whereas this, they're like, well, I'm paying for this and there are plenty of other DMs, right? Otherwise, how does it differ? This is tricky. This is tricky. Does it otherwise differ? I suppose I can't really turn around to people and go, I'm not really feeling it tonight. Can we reschedule? But then I wasn't really doing that before. But I think if you had a tendency to put off games, I think probably you won't enjoy running paid games. Depends on how profitable you want it to be. Yeah, there is that, but I think people do prefer the dependency. Oh, sorry, not the dependability, the consistency. Like, obviously, like there are times when I'm ill or my group are ill. Like, we had one point where there was a whole month where no games happened because one of us would be ill. And it was a relatively small group back then, so it was like, well, let's pause and go to the next one. Now we've got different things in place where I'll just do a one shot or something for the remaining players, and things like that. But yeah, generally speaking, it doesn't change much at all, I would say. The players are thinking outside the box. They're having fun with it. I got some players I genuinely like. If it wasn't for that fact that my brain always wants to completely separate work and play, I would genuinely invite a couple of my players from my paid game onto like the Guild of Icons, because they are just really good players. Like, they would be right at home, but that would be, it would break a barrier I always put up between work and play. Which I think is healthy. I think you should have a barrier between work and play, because otherwise you can't truly relax. He says constantly having burnout because he's always editing videos during his relaxation time. But in general, do as I say, not as I do, all right? Okay. Final question, I think, unless anyone's got any others. This is a good time for that. We're at 2 hours now, and I was expecting 1 hour for questions, so this is pretty good. Armadillo has asked, do you think trying to homebrew / make your own TTRPG helps you understand what other games are doing? I think yeah. I think solid yes on this one. There's a common adage in video game development that you should not use your own engine for a video game. However, the nuanced take I suggest is absolutely make your own game engine once, never use it, but learn what went into making it. Learn that technology, learn that information. Because it's going to help you use the one you use better. So even if you're, I would say, even if you're not intending to sell a TTRPG of your own design, try making one. See what goes into it. See what goes into those decisions. Because the big thing is it can help you interpret a designer's intent, or at least find an intent that works for you for the design. When I get questions about various games, I'm like, okay, I'm looking at this and I'm looking at this wording, I'm looking at this wording. I think the intent is this. Now, I've been wrong. Absolutely been wrong about that. But having a consistent idea of what you think the intent is means that you can sort of, because what the rule says, the rule is written doesn't matter as much as the rule as it was intended to be. Because writing is sort of an imperfect art. The intent is usually the mechanical expression that's actually meant to be there. So I think working that out is good. But I also think being able to on the fly improvise up a system is very helpful, because TTRPGs are open problems, right? They are not bounded. They are not going to have a rule for everything. Even Pathfinder doesn't have a rule for everything. You are going to be creating systems and situations on the fly because your players have done something you don't expect, and that's good. Players doing things the GM doesn't expect is what GMs are playing for. If you did only what the module said you could do, why am I here? Just play a computer game. If you're surprising me, I get to be creative on the spot. It's really good fun. So homebrewing up a bit and doing your own things really helps sort of stretch that muscle, because creativity is a muscle, and stretching it and practicing lets you come up with some good things. It also comes up with creativity, narrative creativity as well, because again, you're not writing a novel, right? You're setting up a situation, and then people are doing something in that situation depending on what their own ideas are. Okay, it's a mesh of these ideas coming together, but that means you need to be able to respond to the things you're not expecting. And you need to be able to respond in a way that is interesting and narratively satisfying. One of my players once complimented me for coming up with a really interesting plot that I'd improvised entirely. To some extent, I worry that I might actually come up with better plots when I'm improvising than when I sit down and think of them. So having that practice means that you can do a little bit more than just the basics, right? And homebrewing sort of gives you that playfulness with the rules. You're no longer like bound by them. You're like, oh, okay, but if I tweak this is fine. You would start to learn which ones you can break and which ones you can bend and which ones you should not be touching. Famously, do not give things more than one reaction in D&D. You will regret it. Yeah. Magnancy says, on the flip side, looking at what other games are doing helps you make such understand your own work. Oh, absolutely, yes. An author who doesn't read is going to really struggle to write well, because we, as creative creatures, we pulp down so much other stuff and use it to inspire us, okay? Don't ever be embarrassed about what you're inspired by. Unless something is Harry Potter. But don't ever... I kid. Don't ever be embarrassed about being derivative. Being derivative is how humans work, okay? We are derivative creatures. Derivative is used as an insult by people who don't really want to actually criticize a thing. That if the problem is it's too close to this other thing, say that. Don't say it's derivative, because all art is derivative. It is better instead to look at so many different things and mulch them together in interesting ways. Certainly. One of the sort of easy hacks for doing something creatively and this, I think I first read this in one of the Without Number books, actually, because Kevin Crawford, who makes the Without Number books, puts incredible GM tools in it, just stunning GM tools. Strongly recommend. Grab all of those books and read them. They've got wonderful things in them. But one of the things is to take two disparate themes and try to mesh them together. I think that was from Planet Design in Stars Without Number. It was like, take these two things and see how they mesh together. See if you can come up with that. It's a really good way to stretch that creativity. Whoop. Let's see. Do I have suggestions for practicing creative? I think I've just answered that one. TTRPGs are tools for collaborative storytelling, and stories need conflict. Sometimes the conflict is the players breaking off their leash and the GM chasing behind them, trying to get them to drop the stick they've got in their mouth. I mean, sometimes that is the case, absolutely. Gremlin players want to do that a lot, and they are lovely. And I'm not using Gremlin pejoratively here. They are great. They add a lot of chaos and a lot of fun to the game. TTRPGs are a constant fight between structure and chaos, and that's great. That friction between the two of them is what is interesting. That's where the interesting bits lie. McNancy says, getting into design helps you understand the principles within games. What is this game beyond what it says it is? 100% agree. Solid agree. And also, what lies is this game telling to the player, and what lies is the game telling to itself? There's a really fascinating thing. I'm trying to remember who. It's Lancer. Lancer does this. So who's the person who wrote most of the lore for Lancer? It wasn't Tom Bloom. It was blanking on the name. Keith will know. Keith, tell me who am I thinking of? Miguel. That's it. Was asked about a statement that is in the Lancer book that this is a utopia. It's a post-scarcity utopia. And that statement is presented as truth. But the rest of the book includes a large combat system of mechanized robots with big guns. What do you need mechanized robots with big guns for in a post-scarcity utopia? And Miguel Lopez Hall, thank you very much. And Miguel Lopez Hall answered, and this is huge paraphrasing. This is just sort of the lesson I learned from it. I merely said it was a utopia. And examining that question is very much what you should be doing at the table. And that is, I think, a really good point about the lies a game might be telling you. For video game fans, Helldivers, I think, is a very good example. Or Warhammer for tabletop fans. The lore is lies. It's all lies. Helldivers is more obvious about it. I think Warhammer is pretty obvious about it, but it also has a lot of books and all that try to pretend everyone's a hero. I'm Dylan Dribby. We're still talking about lies that games tell you. But yeah, it's like one of the things that's happening currently in Lancer is that several massive artillery strikes and warheads are on their way to some of the Outer Rim planets that can't be stopped. They'll hit eventually. That's not utopian. That's a big problem. The current government may be all well and good. I'm not 100% sure how all well and good a government is that's beholden to 7 AIs under a mountain. But, generally, all well and good. Sure, they have your best interests at heart, and it's all great. But also, there are some nukes that are going to obliterate some planets soon that we can't stop. And so, by thinking about it, you start to examine that, and you start to ask those questions in character. It's the polity. It's also the Magi from Neon Genesis Evangelion, isn't it? The three wise men. And I think that is really good on how to make good lore, is to lie to people. It's to lie to people, and lie to people just obviously enough. But yeah, Warhammer does it. Helldivers does it, which is effectively like Warhammer's lore, but sort of dumbed down a little bit. And I say that in a good way. I really like the satire in Helldivers. I laughed that people didn't get it. That there were still people like, oh, Helldivers is anti-woke. Clearly not. Like, come on now. But yeah, lie to people. That's a really great way to do lore, is to lie to people. E710 Subtle. Wait, 710. SEO? What am I missing on that one? Upside down. Oil. My God. I was just wondering because there are two weapons in it. There was one called the E47, I think. E4717? No, Expendable Anti-Tank 17, which is Eat It. And Expendable Anti-Tank 411, which is Eat All. And they're just two explosive things. Yeah, oil. I'm pretty sure they were talking about refugee camp or prisoner camps on literally a planet named after one of the sort of major immigration camps that America made. Like, that's how obvious they are being about it. Anyway, this is not a Helldivers podcast, thank God. So that's the last question, I think. Have I missed any? Let me know if I've missed any. But I think that's the last question. We're just going to go on to the little sort of fun bit at the end where I talk to you about things I've been doing. You know, and I had to write it all down because I've got no functioning memory. So I've done 2 playtests now of Breach, my RPG. Shocking lack of feedback in the second one. I genuinely think the rule set is there. Breach is effectively Die Hard. That's the aim is to do Die Hard. There is sort of an almost like a Breach and Clear sort of vibe to it as well, hence the name. Tactical Breach Wizards is an inspiration. Rainbow Six Siege is an inspiration, things like that. But also, like, you know, proper like action movie nonsense. We're coming down to tweaking mostly. There are a couple of mechanics I'm still trying out a big change. Armor and how it works. I was unsatisfied with that last time. The way armor worked was it was damage reduction, but the damage reduction is causing you to do subtraction, which is annoying and a pain, and no one likes doing. So I'm changing that up. I'm trying another one. But that's going well. I did a sort of Die Hard style adventure with bank robbers who are secretly trying to steal a virus from an engineered virus from a biocorp place as the first play test, and that went pretty well. We had some good fun in there. We had a knife fight with the free snipers who were all trying to operate in the same building, things like that. The narrative side wasn't working too well. There was a little heavy focus, I think, on mental stats and not on physical stuff, so that's changed up a little bit. The gear list needed some tweaking as well. That was pretty good. The weapons needed rebalancing, and I went and did a full like mathematical spreadsheet, make sure that all the weapons roughly did the same damage when you took into account number of shots and things like that, with the exception that melee should do more damage because it's riskier, and that certain weapons are intended to be worse because they have other situational benefits. And that, I think, worked pretty well. Took them through playtest 2, which was essentially Shadow Moses Island from Metal Gear Solid, and sort of a smaller version of that. One piece of feedback that I'm really loving is that in general the combat resolution is pretty quick, which is nice. It is a little faster than D&D, which is good. D&D really is the upper limit. 5th edition is the upper limit of speed I want for the combat. I still think I can make it faster. Without making it any worse, which is what I want to do. So that's going great, and I'm really pleased with that. I'm working on the 3rd play test. Hopefully Keith's going to be joining on that one, which is going to be awesome. Because I would like to, at the moment we've got 3 players. I would like to see how 4 players shakes out. I would love to see how 5 players shakes out as well for time wise and like ability combinations. But yeah, it's going well so far. Yo, no, do feel free to break it. That's what I want people to do. Break it before I try to sell it, preferably. So that's had its 2nd place, and I'm rewriting a few rules. I'm adding some extra rules for things that people were asking, like, you know, what happens when I'm underwater? Things like that. You know, things that are going to be common enough that they're probably going to happen. But yeah, it's in general, it's working. There are a couple of things that I've added that I think work really nicely, and sort of solve a few issues. And there's nothing I feel that needs to be removed anymore, which is good. Nothing feels superfluous right now. I have a few ideas that might need to go, and I've sort of designated them as maybe need to go. We'll do a playtest and see if they add any value. But yeah, I think pretty happy with that. And now, yeah, I've come up with another RPG. I'm sorry. I can't stop myself. I can't stop myself. This would be the second unnamed RPG that I've come up with. So I want to show off the first one, which doesn't have a name. It's sort of inspired by a little bit by Fate, and also, if anyone's familiar, by the 1-Up HP Dragon, which is a wonderful article on game design. But the thing that sort of annoyed me with the 1 HP Dragon series is that eventually they were like, well, it's going to need dice mechanics. And I was like, well, no, it doesn't. The whole point is not using dice anymore. We don't need uncertainty for this to work. You were so close. Let me finish it for you. So I've decided to do that. So I've taken it and I've changed it up a bit. And made a new game. Now, let me just bear with me a sec. I've got it because I'm doing on display capture. I've got to get the window open. So hold on a sec. What was I doing it in? I think I used Affinity for this because I was trying to lay out stuff. I normally just write things in ellipsis. So let me get that up. No, I don't need to update. It's like a tiny version has changed. It's like, I don't care. Okay, this should work. So I just need to show you an example of what I expect your inventory to look like, because that's the kind of the thing. Hey, Ben, welcome in. We were talking about you earlier. So, right, let me put that back on. Here we go. Let me zoom in a little. Okay. So this is currently unnamed. The idea is you have a grid inventory, which you can sort of see here. I don't really know how best to... Oh, my hair is tickling me a lot. I need to get it cut. Now best to widen this, which is annoying, because it's not taking up much. Oh, I've just turned things off instead. I don't want to do it. Nope, that's not resizing at all. So, the idea is you've got a grid inventory. Okay. And this is sort of meant to be a dungeon crawling sort of game. I do think it would work in non-dungeon crawling scenarios, but I really am just trying it with that more narrow sort of theme first. So the idea is, as you adventure, you find items that you put in your pack, and they do not have many rules, if any. And then when you get into a combat, it's technically speaking, just when you find a problem, you have to use your stuff to solve it. And when you fail to use your stuff to solve it, you gain injuries that block up your inventory and start filling up your inventory. When your inventory is completely full and you can't remove anything to put in a new injury, that is when you die. So your inventory is effectively your health, but it's also your inventory. And the way these work is they are like fate aspects. So what you must do to solve a problem is you are given various different sentences. These are the problems that you've got to deal with. As an example, let's take the Balrog in Moria. Here's some problems. 1, it's on fire. Like, it's real hot. 2, it has a whip and a sword. And 3, goblins are firing arrows at you constantly, right? There's 3 big problems you've got to solve right now. You look at your inventory and you're like, I've got a fireball. Could I do something with that? I'm good at acrobatics. I could maybe use that to dodge the arrows or something. I got some armor, I guess. And so, but of course you've got multiple players, all with their own inventories. What you then do is, for one of those problems, let's say you choose arrows, right? You're like, I'm going to dodge out of the way of the arrows and try and like make them waste all of their ammunition firing at me while I like distract away from everyone else. And then I'm going to sling a fireball in their direction and blast them out, okay? You've used 2 tags. And because you've combined 2 tags together, your effect is more powerful. You are actually going to suppress this problem, so it's not going to be a problem for anyone. Meanwhile, other people are addressing other problems. If you can address all of the problems at the same time, you succeed. Otherwise, any unsuppressed problems will give you an injury and you keep going. So you have avoided problems mean that you're not going to get a comeuppance from it that turn. Suppressed means no one's getting a comeuppance from it that turn. And then destroyed means it can't affect anyone ever again. You want to destroy all of them, basically. And so you want to combine your abilities and other people's stuff as well. You can combine your stuff with other people's to take them out. So there are no dice. Technically, I call this a numberless RPG, but there is one number. There's one number I've not been able to get rid of, and that's just for like really small items or conditions. They might tick down, and that's how that works. It's almost entirely numberless though. So that's how this. It's a relatively simple system. I haven't yet play tested it, but I've done solo play tests, but that's never as informative as a proper playtest. I'm setting one up, but yeah, there is one number. So you know, conditions can fill up your inventory, injuries fill up your inventory, items that you pick up like treasure fills up your inventory, and the idea is that really the GM should be able to improvise what these things do. Like these things here are like examples. You know, like that sort of thing. But you can always use it narratively in a different way. You can even use your injuries. So your injury might actually specifically say what it is. Like a major injury might be a broken arm or something like that. And if you can find a way to use a broken arm to your advantage, absolutely you can use that. So yeah, that's it. So the only rules that I've really got for this is that each of these tag things has permanent or not, consumable or not, or trigger or not, or stack. Those are the rules. Done. Permanent means you can't remove it from your inventory even if you want to. Trigger means it does something when something happens. Consumable means it has to be removed from your inventory when you use it. And that's it. Stack means that if it says to remove a stack, you lower that, and if you remove all the stacks, it's gone. That's basically it. You published a nearly numberless game too. The concept of amounts is hard to avoid. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, like technically there is a number that is your health. It's like your free inventory, strictly speaking. It's not written down, of course, but that number is there. It's just sort of being hidden. But yeah, the idea is that you are to come up with a creative solution, combined solution with your party, using this to whatever problem you're hitting. And it doesn't have to be a person. It could be trying to cross a ravine or something like that. I think that's flexible enough to work outside of dungeon crawling, but the thinking I've done for it so far is to purely think of it in terms of dungeon crawling, and that is where I would start. I wouldn't go on any of the others. So that's one that I think the rules are done. Obviously it needs playtesting to confirm that the rules are done, but I think they're basically done. You know, I've got a progression system in there, got what to do with treasure and things like that. It's not a huge thing. You can spend treasure to gain extra slots in your extra space in your inventory, or you can spend it on bringing in better items that you start with. It's sort of, I realize the meta of this is sort of an extraction game. But then what OSR dungeon crawlers aren't really extraction games. So yeah, that's that whole thing. That's a much smaller one than say like Breach is like 15,000 words already, and it doesn't have it's nowhere near content complete. Whereas this, I think, was like 1,000 words total, and that includes an example of play. You think depending on people's taste and interpretation, many things could be dungeon crawling. I think that is also very true. You can stretch the idea of a dungeon very well, certainly, to the extent that, yeah, really a lot of things are dungeon crawling still. So that's that one. And the other one I've been working on, I've really only really done class design as an idea for this. But I was talking to people on Discord about how a shocking number of the really like tactics games, tactics TTRPGs, things like Draw Steel, things like 4th edition, things like Lancer and all that, do still borrow heavily from Final Fantasy Tactics. And well, what if I did my own? So I have done that. I've done at least the class design around it. Because I was bored, all right? And I should not be allowed. When I'm bored, next time I'm bored, someone just hit me with a brick in the face and say, Nick, relax for once. All right, don't make another thing. Relax. You can. You're allowed. So let me just get that one out. Bear with me a second. Okay. Boom. Okay, let me zoom in a little. Right. So, let me show what's an interesting one. Oh, I like Daredevil. Daredevil's an interesting one. Let's show that one off. Okay. So the idea is something like Final Fantasy Tactics or Lancer, you have a bunch of classes, and these are effectively jobs, and you will have multiple. So at level 1, you'll have 2 classes, and at level 5, you get a 3rd class. And you build a hybrid character out of these classes. You will always get the passives of all of your classes. You will get the trigger of all your classes, which is essentially a reaction, a custom reaction. You gain the at-will ability of both classes, and then you will pick your encounter powers, called scene powers in this, from your classes. And each time you level up, you gain a new one, essentially. And these are more powerful abilities. And then the final one, which I'm sure someone has done before. I can't think of one that's done before, but I'm certain it's been done before. Like, I'm sure I'm not inventing this, is the crisis ability, which is a little bit like, it's a little like a core power or a limit break, except it happens when you hit 0. When you hit 0 health, your crisis ability triggers automatically. And it's there to sort of prevent a death spiral, and also to tempt people to take risks. Again, we were talking earlier about healing and tempting people to take risks and risk aversion. And this is to tempt people to take risks. So some very basic things. I'm not using standard D&D stats. I have listed all the stats. I've listed them at the top, and I can go into what they are. Generally, health is max HP. Speed is your movement speed, but there are a bunch of others. Strike is the damage you do, depending on whether it's the enemy's next to you or the enemy's far away. And each class will have a different one of those. This is a specific rule. Double effect is a specific rule that happens to this class. I think one other class uses double effect so far, but what I tend to do with design is just put the rules next to where they're going to be used. So with the Daredevil's whole idea is to get into crisis if possible. It is inspired in many ways by the Tokugawa Mech from Lancer, which wants to be in the danger zone, which is you have more than half your heat applied. You're close to overheating, essentially. Except this is with your health. So this one, when it drops to 0, doesn't first time. Just drops to 1 health instead. But can still use its crisis ability then. So it gets to use it twice. Everyone else gets to use it once. The first time they drop to 0, your crisis ability goes off and applies. But if you drop to 0 again after you've hit your crisis ability, you die. That's how it works. So you've got this little buffer, but that's it. This one can do it twice. The trigger, so triggers are things that happen in response to certain circumstances. D&D has them called reactions. Obviously, triggered actions in Draw Steel. They're called triggers in Final Fantasy Tactics as well. This one, if you take damage that leaves you at 5 health or less, I actually want to get rid of hit points and call it health, just because that makes it's easier. Your next Oh, that should be called scene. See, look at that. We're already finding things that need to be rewritten. Your next ability has doubled effect. So triggers happen anytime that they would be triggered. Which is how Final Fantasy Tactics does it. Sort of how Lancer does it. Lancer imposes limits a lot to the triggers, but not always. Or what a free triggered action would be in Draw Steel. Which I find more narratively interesting. Reactions are limited in D&D for a reason. They slow down the game and they can complicate the game. But I posit, and this is my personal theory, having more reactions actually makes you pay attention between your turn more than otherwise. If you maybe are doing something 6 times between your turns, you are going to be paying attention. You won't be on your phone. You won't just be like staring into space. You won't be zooming out. And I say this as a person who struggles to pay attention in between turns. Like, I do my best. I try to be a hype man and all that. But the brain tries to switch off. If you're looking out for something, though, you stay switched on. Nancy says, this is cool. I'm doing something 4E inspired too, but it's an alternate set of rules for Hero Quest. Ooh, interesting. Well, that's very interesting. I would love to hear more about that. Absolutely. So yeah, these triggers happen every time. It can get exhausting. That is a problem. So that is why I try to make it as easy as possible to pay attention. Like with this, you're only ever paying attention to 2 triggers. With D&D, you might have like 4 or 5 reactions realistically based on your various abilities. With this, you've only got 2, which is the triggers of both of your classes. Honestly, I may change that even to just 1. Obviously, this hasn't been play tested. One idea might be you take a trigger from one of your classes and you keep that. That's what Final Fantasy Tactics did. You only had 1 trigger. Which you took from your classes. But yeah, at the moment it's all of them because I think that might be more interesting, but we'll see. We'll see. Then your at-will powers, I would rename them ideally. I don't like at-will as a term. It is not something people can instantly like understand what it's for. So that might get renamed. Equivalent to a cantrip in D&D, I guess. It's just that you can use this an unlimited number of times. The Daredevil's one is strike. So strike is you deal damage. It's a shorthand for that. The way I'm writing these is that each line is its own action to make these easy to run. Ideally, honestly, you'd bullet point these. Which isn't going to work with the way I've written this. Just with the way I've laid it out. But you would bullet point these. So I don't like per turn, per battle, per adventure either. The reason I don't like per turn is because it sort of implies that you can do it every turn even if you're doing something else. I would argue at will is just as bad, though. That's the problem. It's like I can't think of a good one. So each line is an individual action. Modifiers or things you need to know about it are indented underneath them. There is no rolling to hit in this. It happens. There is no roll for damage. It happens. This should be pretty quick. And it is still an open system because you don't know what your opponent's going to do. And there isn't necessarily a solution because they can design their own monsters, right? But yeah, you strike, you deal 1 extra damage with your strike beyond what your normal strike is. So your strike is, if you're next to them, you do 5 damage as a daredevil because you want to be up next to them because that's risky. If you're far away, you do 1 damage, right? If you're using double-edged sword, you do 2 damage far away, 6 damage up close. But you take 1 damage, which you normally wouldn't want to do. But remember, your trigger here, if you take damage that leaves you at 5 HP or less, your next thing is doubled. And doubled effect means all numbers are doubled, including strike damage. So if you use double-edged sword that leaves you at 5 HP or less, adrenaline rush triggers, and that means you're like, oh, well, now it's time to use one of my scene powers because they're going to be twice as effective. So, for example, you use Live Fast, which lets you move 6, then strike, and then move 6. Doubled effect is move 12, strike, move 12. It's like saying in Lance, you don't want heat. Yeah, exactly right. As a daredevil, you do want to be taking damage. Live fast, move 6, strike, move 6. But the interesting thing is, of course, these are hybrid classes. You will have this and another class. So you will have other things that will be doubled as well. Or you could use Die Young. Strike if you have 10 health or less remaining. Strike again. And then take 10 damage. If you have that with double effect. But of course, 10 damage isn't as scary, even if you're under 5, because you've got death save bringing you back to 1 again. So you can use that to great effect, but you've got to manage that risk. And then your crisis, when you actually hit crisis, you ignore the next time you would take damage. If adrenaline rush has just hit, which it might have, because, okay, so let's say you're playing, right? You use double-edged sword. It takes you down to 5 health. Adrenaline rush triggers. Okay. On your next turn, you use Die Young. You strike, doing double damage. If you have 10 health or less remaining, you strike again, dealing double damage. You then take 10 damage. That takes you down to 0. Knife's Edge happens. Death save happens, so you drop to 1. Knife's Edge happens, so your crisis happens. Right? But adrenaline rush is also happening right now because you're at 5 HP or less because you've taken damage. So now your crisis is doing the next 2 times you would take damage are ignored. Now this means your trigger isn't going to be happening for those 2 types of damage. And you won't be ending crisis again. But on the other hand, you can now tank 2 hits. So there's this play between you getting hit and you ignoring damage that happens in Devil. It's probably the most complex class, even though it's only an A5 page. Something easier, the healer is the chemist. So this is basically the apothecary from Final Fantasy Tactics, literally how it works. You can throw items is the passive you get in the apothecary. Your trigger is when a character within your range stat loses health, they gain health equal to your strike value. So that's free because they're usually distant. Your at will also regains health to people as well, so you're keeping people healed up. You're not doing much damage, but you're keeping people healed up. Again, remember, you would combine this with another class that ideally does some damage. But also you can double up the powers of consumables. You can poison people. You can double their speed, which is very helpful. And your crisis is you heal yourself. So crisis, normally you drop to 0, you're still at 0 HP. This, you're going to heal yourself, gaining free health. There are other ways to boost your strike as well. And then just something that I always do a Storm Mage because I played a 4th edition Sword Mage themed off of lightning. So I did my own version, right? The passive is that your attacks, weak as hell. You do 1 damage, no matter what. But you add 1 to that damage for every square you've moved. So as you're moving, the air is charging up electricity around you, and then you discharge it in an attack. But when you take damage, your speed increases as well. So you go faster and faster and faster. Your at-will attack also includes moving 1 for free to do additional damage. One of your scene powers is to literally double your speed. Note that if you do that after your speed has been increased by kinetic transfer, that's doubled as well. Chain is like zapping between people and attacking them. None of this is balanced, of course. But that's going to add to your movement. And you've got another one that has a delayed attack later, which lets you sort of kind of prepare to increase your speed and go. So things like that. The idea is that they're all small chunks of like an archetype of play that you mix and match. And then the last one is the silliest, the bomb mage. This is like for everyone, people who don't ask for what size the room is, they cast fireball. You do more damage if your blast attacks are area of effect. If your area of effect attacks include you, you deal more damage. But you effectively have resistance to your own attacks. You can have allies use your blast stat, which is the area of your area of effect spells, instead of their own. You can put down mines. You can rocket jump. You can do a bit of daze. And then your blast stat doubles until the end of the fight when you enter crisis. So that's the radius of all your booms gets so much bigger. So I think this is the sort of thing I would like to make a character for, but I have no idea if it's any fun. And the only way to find that out, of course, is playtesting. Problem is, I'm already playtesting another RPG, technically 2 other RPGs. So I don't imagine this will like see the light of day for ages. I do think like the rules otherwise around it are pretty easy. I don't think you need to do too much beyond this. Like, you just have the ability to do what it says, and then just come up with how the character creation works, come up with a few items and how they work. But then you need a narrative side around it, right? And this is where it would be very different, the execution and the narrative, because of course there's no chance here. So what do you do narrative side, right? This is a war game so far, but it's not a narrative. And that's where the like difficult questions come in. And we were talking about it earlier, you know, do you just bolt on a different system? Do I put Powered by the Apocalypse on here and call it a day? Maybe. I can't put this on. But one thing I think is this is probably a shockingly fast combat, because you move in, you attack, doing flat damage, no dice are being rolled, no one's doing calculations much, and then you go on to the next person. That could be a minute. I'm just very interested in the Numberless one. Like, my brain is churning ideas for how to do it, like horror. Oh, I think you could definitely do it horror. Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. No, I've done several. I did one for Bree, of course. Thief. You steal their abilities, so that they can't use them. You steal their armor, and you steal. You actually use some of their abilities, and of course, you get the reverse pickpocket from Fallout. It'd be cool to see this one's combat sometime. Yeah, I think so. I think I would need to do more, but yeah, it would be neat. Yeah, the stats there. You got range, which is distance of your abilities. Blast is the area of effect. Speed is how far you move. Health is your max health. Physical and mental saves, which I'm not sure I need. I've yet to really have a class need them that much. But maybe they're in there, and maybe that's the only time you roll a die. And that's roll a die and try and get lower than your value. And then strike is additional damage to your strikes. And that's kind of it. Yeah, I think it kind of just works, but that's because I haven't playtested it. But then I thought Breach kind of works, and I playtested and I was like, actually, I'm right. It does kind of work. This kind of just kind of works. Obviously, I have changed a lot of Breach. But I think the benefit of Breach is that I did not cargo cult it. Like I was saying earlier, like, you don't want to cargo cult your game. You want to be intentional about the decisions you're making. And I didn't go, okay, I'm going to put in D&D's dice resolution or so-and-so. I'm going to go, okay, well, what is the problem that I need to solve here? Or what is the... No, that's not how I think about it either. The way you think about it is you go, what is the fantasy I'm trying to support? And I don't necessarily mean like D&D is fantasy. I'm like, what is the image I want someone to have in their head or be able to express? Like, they've got it in their head and they want to express this in the game. How do I do that? And how do I do that in a way that doesn't take too long, isn't too hard to understand, and you know, similarly, it doesn't ruin everyone else's fun, right? So with Breach, the thing is, I want to express is an equipment-based fantasy, where having the right tool for the job is a great deal of satisfaction and makes your life so much easier. So how do I do that? Because one of the problems with an equipment-based fantasy is thinking ahead and knowing what is coming up. Blades in the Dark solves this with flashbacks. It doesn't have an equipment-based fantasy, but it solves this problem with flashbacks. You go, oh, I've always had this. I'm going to spend this coin to have always had it because I did the planning, I did the research. This goes the other way and does expect you to do the research, but it gives you ways to do the research. It empowers you to research in ways that will give you good answers. And the idea is of something like the Hitman games and all that. You get a briefing beforehand. The GM will already have some information about the world ready to go for you to feed questions, and then you use a budget of other questions, so you have to ask those questions. That budget's going to go to waste otherwise. And you get additional information, and then you set your load out and you bring your stuff and you get ready to go. But it also doesn't tie you into it, because the enemies you find there will have their own equipment, so you can pick up their weapons, you can pick up their clothing and everything if you need it. And it is sort of designed like another one of the things I wanted combat to feel tense. I wanted you to be worried, but it also is an action movie, so you really should be able to withstand a lot of hurt. So to solve that, I did borrow a little bit from Lancer there and gave you multiple health bars effectively. Anytime you drop to 0 HP, you return to 100% health. You return to full. But you gain a wound. Now, problems with wounds, right? Mechanically speaking, is they are death spirals. I've also solved that. The problem with wounds is they're death spirals because they make you worse at the game mid-game, right? You are like, oh, the bad situation is now suddenly worse, right? Because my movement speed's halved, or I'm worse at aiming now. But the reason I am now worse at aiming is because I'm facing up against a situation that is not going well for me, so now it's going worse. That's a death spiral. You are guaranteeing a negative outcome by making it worse when you have a negative outcome already. The way Breach solves this is genuinely, I'm very pleased with it because it works in fiction as well, and a good rule works in fiction. Your wounds that you get don't apply until the combat ends. And the way that works in fiction is in action movies, when someone's shot, they don't know it until the end. You never know you've been shot until the end, unless it's like narratively fascinating. So even if you die in Breach, you don't die until the end of the fight. And then you have that wonderful, tearful moment of, Sarge, you've been shot. Oh, it's just a flesh wound as they're bleeding out on the ground, right? But it's that sort of thing. So your wounds don't apply until the end. So because you know that the wounds are going to, are applying from now on, but you are now in control of what risk you take. You're not in control of what risk you take mid-fight, but afterwards you're like, okay, all right, well, now I've got 2 injuries to my legs. Okay, so anything I do with my leg, I'm going to be slower in the fight. I need to prepare accordingly, because Breach is always about prepare, give yourself an advantage, and then go in. So the advantages you choose might now be different. Yeah. It's like roller derby penalties. Flat track, most common these days, you serve your penalties immediately. With bank track, the classic OG, you don't serve your penalties until the next jam. Ah, okay. Yeah, so like that. Yeah, and as I said, the fiction is that, people get shot and they're high on adrenaline, they don't really notice it until afterwards, right? And that's what we are going for with Breach. I say we as if it's a team. I'm designing this, but that's what I'm going for with Breach. And I think that works. So far, though, the playtests have had people injured more than they should be. Went through, I think, did 2 fights in the last playtest. And I think everyone had at least 6 injuries by the end of that second fight. And that's just balance. That's just twisting how much health the enemies have, things like that. I'm certain we can fix that. Or just give players a little bit more health. At the moment, you've got 10 health, but weapons can do up to 12 damage. So you get a bit worried. I mean, the weaker weapons don't, but like if you get shot by a sniper, you're gonna immediately take an injury. Things like that. I think nobody was surprised by your royal we. We're just like, yeah, Nick's gone mad with power. What else is new? The genuine reason I say we a lot about projects is the 5 years I spent in academia, because you just always refer to it as we in like your doctorate and things like that, and it's just stuck. It's just stuck from there. Is it too hot to dunk me in the river? If anything, it's hot enough to dunk me in the river. Please do so. It's so damn hot. Heat wave's coming again. That's why I'm doing this stream, as I say, because then I can have the aircon on. I will have to stop soon though, because it's getting to the point where I've got to turn the aircon off for the benefit of my neighbors, because it's a loud thing. But I think we're done. I've done all the show-offs. Well, hang on a sec. Let me go back and double check my list of notes, because I'm sure I meant to talk about other things. Bear with me a sec. Let me just go back to that. Hold on. There we go. Okay, I missed this bit. I'm gonna go through this quick. I've been playing some games lately. Stars Without Number, I've been running for the Guild of Icons. I'm enjoying it. I would say first level, there's not enough tools and toys to play with. I would like there to be a few more things. It really feels like you take the attack action and then your turn is over, and that's kind of it. It's fast, but it feels like there could be a few more things to play with. I do not like the Without Number games dedication to OSR class structure. I think the structure is kind of bad because you have warrior, expert, and magic user, but the problem is they then keep trying to add a bunch of different classes to magic user, and it's like, this counts as a partial magic user. And I'm like, yeah, kind of feels like the class structure sucks, doesn't it? If you're doing this all the time. Maybe just admit that you want more than 3 classes. I know that ruins OSR intercompatibility, but I kind of don't care. Make a better game. I've also been playing a lot of Draw Steel. I've been running it for my paid games. I ran the what's the introductory module called? The Delian Tomb. Ran that. That's a great adventure. Really good fun. Really interesting villains in it. Really interesting enemies and stuff like that. I think it's also the best intro to an RPG I've ever seen, because it literally uses video game tutorial logic in that you have specific character sheets that level up as you go along before you get anywhere near leveling up. So you start with the absolute basics, and then you gain for example, encounter powers, and then you gain triggered actions, and then it sort of gradually teaches you how to play your character, which is good because they're very complex. Very complex. But yeah, I'm enjoying that a lot. I really like how sort of bombastic the game is. There are things I don't like. I really think it's poorly laid out. I think the summoner takes too long. But in general, I like it. Obviously, Lancer, I'm continuing to play. I'm in Keith's game. I'm going to be playing on Thursday during Heatwave, which is going to be great, but it's okay because I play a real grumpy bastard. So I will be just well in character for that. It's going to be 33C in here. It's going to be 36C in here, actually. It's going to be 33C outside, but I will have to have the windows closed. I really like Lancer. I think it's very good fun. It needs errata desperately. Tom Bloom, please, for fuck's sake, write some errata. There are so many open questions about how Lancer works. Please, I beg of thee, do some errata. I just finished up D&D 4th edition, long campaign that Keith was running for me and a bunch of people on Discord. Really good combat game. The combat in 4th edition, I still haven't found a game that does better combat in 4th edition. And it's a combination of the fact that the rules work pretty well. The combat abilities are extremely varied and very fun, and there's just so much of it. It's kind of absurd. 4th edition had not that much third-party stuff, but had so much third-party stuff, genuinely mad. But yeah, the classes are really interesting. There's like 30 of them. It might be 15. I can't remember. And yeah, they're really good fun, really, really well balanced. And it doesn't have multi-classing, which is great. and I mean that. Also, I've been running a lot of D&D 5th edition for my paid games. Still enjoying that a lot. Doing a lot of high-level D&D 5th edition, which I haven't really had a chance to do much of in a while. I think 2024's high-level stuff is actually pretty good. I do think it still does have the issue that it's a little too easy once you get over 10th level. I don't think they've balanced it enough. I think it needs to get harder at 10th level and onwards. I think it does still suffer from that, but it is good fun, and the abilities the players get are just absurd, and that's always really good fun. I'll just go, sorry, what does that spell do, when someone says, oh, and then it does this, and that's always a great moment. And not a TTRPG, but I played 007 First Light, and I absolutely loved it. I think that there is probably a discussion you can have about threat levels and tension and conflict escalation and de-escalation in First Light that would apply to TTRPGs. I would need to do some more prep for it, and I'd probably need to have someone else on to talk about it. I think Keith is probably the person I would bring on to talk about this. But the escalation and de-escalation system in First Light, I think, is incredible. It is... Well, the basic thing is you can't shoot people until you have a license to kill, and you only got a license to kill if someone is showing genuine need to harm you, which means you have to mess up. It becomes the opposite of a doom spiral, because suddenly you're allowed to use lethal force. And it is something I've actually borrowed a little bit into Breach, because I think it's very, very good. But it also then comes back down again once things are going well. It's a really good self-balancing measure. Armadillo says, thank you for the stream. Well, no problem. Would love to talk with you more about the Numberless playtest and interest. Oh, yes, absolutely. I would love to talk about it some more as well. Yeah. Yeah, that's me. So thank you everyone who's been watching this. I really appreciate it. Just having a nice natter on something that I intend to never call a podcast, if possible. Those of you who've been watching on YouTube, I hope you've had a good time as well, and do all of the necessary YouTube things involving all the buttons that are arrayed under the screen.